The Corpus Hermeticum by Hermes Trismegistus. Chapter 1. Hermes Trismegistus, his first book. O my son, write this first book, both for humanity's sake and for piety towards God. For there can be no religion more true or just than to know the things that are, and to acknowledge thanks for all things to him that made them, which thing I shall not cease continually to do so. What then should a man do, O Father, to lead his life well, seeing there is nothing here true? Be pious and religious, O my son, for he that does so is the best and highest philosopher, and without philosophy it is impossible ever to attain to the height and exactness of piety and religion. But he that shall learn and study the things that are, and how they are ordained and governed, and by whom, and for what cause, or to what end, will acknowledge thanks to the workman, as to a good father, an excellent nurse, and a faithful steward. And he that gives thanks shall be pious or religious, and he that is religious shall know both where the truth is and what it is, and learning he will be yet more and more religious. For never, O my son, shall or can that soul, which, while it is in the body, lightens and lifts up itself to know and comprehends that which is good and true, slide back to the contrary. For it is infinitely enamored by this, and forgets all evils. And when it hath learned and known its father and progenitor, it can no more apostatize or depart from that good. And let this, O son, be the end of religion and piety, by which, when one arrives, you will both live well and die blessedly, while your soul is not ignorant whether it may return and fly back again. For this only, O son, is the way to the truth, which our progenitors traveled in, and by which, making their journey, they at length attained to the good. It is a venerable way and plain, but hard and difficult for the soul to go in, that is in the body. For first must it war against its own self, and after much strife and dissension, it must be overcome of the part. For the contention is of one against two, while it ascends, and they strive to hold and detain it. But the victory of both is not like, for the one that hastens to that which is good, but the other is a neighbor to the things that are evil, and that which is good desires to be set at liberty, but the things that are evil love bondage and slavery. And if the two parts be overcome, they become quiet, and are content to accept of it as their ruler. But if the one be overcome of the two, it is by them led and carried to be punished by its being and continuance here. This, O son, the guide and the way that leads thither, for you must first forsake the body before your death, and get victory in this contention and difficult life, and when you have overcome, return. But now, O my son, I will by heads run through the things that are. Understand what I say, and remember what you hear. All things that are moved, only that which is not is immovable. Every body is able to be changed. Not every body is dissoluble. Some bodies are able to be dissolved. Every living being is not mortal, nor every living thing is immortal. That which may be dissolved is also corruptible. That which abides always is unchangeable. That which is unchangeable is eternal. That which is always made is always corrupted. That which is made but once is never corrupted, neither becomes any other thing. Firstly, God. Secondly, the world. Thirdly, man. The world for man, man for God. Of the soul, that part which is sensible is mortal, but that part which is reasonable is immortal. Every essence is immortal. Every essence is unchangeable. Everything that is paired. None of the things that are paired stand still. Not all things are moved by a soul, but everything that is moved by a soul. Everything that suffers is sensible. Everything that is sensible suffers. Everything that is sad rejoices also, and is a mortal living creature. Not everything that has joy is also sad, but is an eternal living thing. Not every body is sick. Every body that is sick is corruptible. The mind is in God, reasoning, or disputing, or discoursing in man. Reason is in the mind. The mind is absent of suffering. No thing in a body is true. All that is incorporeal is void of lying. Everything that is made is corruptible. Nothing good is upon earth. Nothing evil is in heaven. God is good, man is evil. Good is voluntary, or of its own accord. Evil is involuntary, or against its will. The gods choose good things as good things. Time is a divine thing. Law is humane. Malice is the nourishment of the world. Time is the corruption of man. Whatsoever is in heaven is unalterable. All upon earth is alterable. Nothing in heaven is enslaved. Nothing upon earth is free. Nothing is unknown in heaven. Nothing is known upon earth. The things upon earth communicate not with those in heaven. All things in heaven are beyond guilt. All things upon earth are subject to reprehension. That which is immortal is not mortal. That which is mortal is not immortal. That which is sown is not always begotten, but that which is begotten always is sown. Of a dissolvable body there are two times, one for sowing to generation, one from generation to death. Of an everlasting body, the time is only from the generation. Corruptible bodies are increased and diminished. Corruptible matter is altered into contraries, to wit, corruption and generation, but eternal matter goes only into itself and its kind. The generation of man is corruption. The corruption of man is the beginning of generation. That which reproduces or begets another is itself an offspring or begotten by another. Of things that are, some are in bodies, some in their ideas. Whatsoever things belong to operation or working are in a body. That which is immortal partakes not of that which is mortal. That which is mortal comes not into a body immortal, but that which is immortal comes into that which is mortal. Operations or workings are not carried upwards, but descended downwards. Things upon heaven do not advantage those in heaven, but all things in heaven do profit and advantage all things upon earth. Heaven is capable and a fit receptacle of everlasting bodies, the earth of corruptible bodies. The earth is brutish, the heaven is reasonable or rational. Those things that are in heaven are subjected or placed under it, but the things on earth are placed upon it. Heaven is the first element. Providence is divine order. Necessity is the minister or servant of providence. Fortune is the carriage or effect of that which is without order, the idol of operation, a lying fantasy or opinion. What is God? The immutable or unalterable good. What is man? An unchangeable evil. If you perfectly remember these heads, you cannot forget those things which in more words I have largely expounded unto you, for these are the contents or abridgment of them. Avoid all conversation with the multitude or common people, for I would not have you subject to envy, much less to be ridiculous unto the multitude. For the like always takes to itself which is like, but the unlike never agrees with the unlike. Such discourses of these have very few auditors, and peradventure very few will have, but they have something peculiar unto themselves. They do rather sharpen and whet evil men to their maliciousness. Therefore it behooves to avoid the multitude. and take heed of them, not as understanding the virtue and power of the things that are said. What do you mean, O Father? This, O Son, the whole nature and composition of those living things called men is very prone to maliciousness, and is very familiar, and as it were nourished with them, and is therefore delighted with it. Now this wit, if it shall come to learn or know things that the world was once made, and all things are done according to providence or necessity, destiny or fate, bearing rule over all, will he not be much worse than himself, despising the whole because it was made? And if he may lay the cause of evil upon fate or destiny, he will never abstain from any evil work. Wherefore we must look warily to such kind of people, that being in ignorance they may be less evil for fear of that which is hidden and kept secret. Chapter 2. Poemander. My thoughts being once seriously busied about things that are, and my understanding lifted up, all my bodily senses being exceedingly held back, as it is with them that are very tired, by reason either of fullness of meat or of exhaustion, I thought I saw one of an exceeding great stature, and of an infinite greatness, call me by name, and say to me, What do you wish to see and hear? Or what would you understand to learn and know? Then said I, Who are you? I am, he said, Poemander, the mind of the great Lord, the most mighty and absolute Emperor. I know what you wish, and I am always present with you. Then I said I would learn the things that are, and understand the nature of them, and know God. How? Said he. I answered that I would gladly hear. Then he said, Have me again in thy mind, and whatsoever you wish to learn I will teach you. When he had said these things, he was changed in his idea or form, and straightway, in the twinkling of an eye, all things were opened unto me. And I saw an infinite sight. All things were becoming light, both sweet and exceedingly pleasant, and I was wonderfully delighted in seeing it. But after a little while there was a darkness made in part, coming down obliquely, fearful and hideous, which seemed to me to be changed into a certain moist nature, unspeakably troubled, which yielded a smoke as from fire, and from which proceeded a voice unutterable and very mournful, but inarticulate, inasmuch as it seemed to have come from the light. Then from that light a certain holy word joined itself unto nature, and then came the pure and unmixed fire from the moist nature upwards on high. It was exceedingly light, and sharp and dynamic as well. And the air, which was also light, followed the spirit and mourned up to fire, insomuch that it seemed to hang and depend on it. And the earth and the water stayed by themselves so mingled together, that the earth could not be seen for the water, but they were moved because of the spiritual word that was carried upon them. Then said Poemander to me, Do you understand this vision and what it means? I shall know, said I. Then he said, I am that light, the mind, thy God, who am before that moist nature that appeared out of darkness, and that bright and shining word from the mind is the Son of God. How is that? I asked. Thus, he replied, understand it. That which in you sees and hears, the word of the Lord, and the mind of the Father God, differ not from one another, and the union of these is life. I said, I thank thee. He said, But first, conceive well the light in your mind, and know it. When he had said thus, for a long time we looked steadfastly, one upon the other, insomuch that I trembled at his idea or form. But when he nodded to me, I beheld in my mind the light that is innumerable, and the truly indefinite ornament or world, and that the fire is comprehended or contained in, or by a great moist power, and constrained to keep its place and form. These things I understood, seeing the word, or Poemander. And when I was mightily amazed, he said again unto me, Have you seen in your mind the archetypal form which was before the indeterminate and indefinite beginning? Thus said Poemander to me. But how, I said, or from what substance are the elements of nature made? He said, of the will and counsel of God, which taking the word, and beholding the beautiful world, imitated it, and so made this world by the principal and vital seeds or soul-like productions of itself. For the mind being God, male and female, life and light, brought forth by his word another mind or workman, which being God of fire, and the Spirit, fashioned and formed 7 other governors, which in their circles contain the tangible world, whose government or disposition is called fate or destiny. It straightway came forth, or exalted itself from the downward elements of God, the Word of God, into the clean and pure workmanship of nature, and was united to the workman mind, for it was consubstantial, and so the downward born elements of nature were left without reason, that they might be the only matter. But the workman, mind, together with the word, containing the circles and spinning them about, turned round as a wheel his own workmanship, and suffered them to be turned from an infinite beginning to an indeterminable end, for they always begin where they end. And the circulation or running round of these, as the mind wills, out of the lower or downward born elements, brought forth unreasonable or brutish creatures, for they had no reason, the air-flying things, and the water such as swim. And the earth and the water were separated, one from the other, as the mind willed. And the earth brought forth from herself such living creatures as she had, 4-footed and creeping beasts, wild and tame. But the Father of all things, the mind being life and light, brought forth man like unto himself, whom he loved as his proper birth. For he was all beauteous, having the image of his Father. For indeed God was exceedingly enamored of his own shape and form, and delivered unto it all his own creations. But he, seeing and understanding the creation of the workman in the whole, would need as well also himself to fall to work, and so was separated from the Father, being in the sphere of generation or operation. Having all power, he considered the operations or workmanship of the 7, but they loved him, and everyone made him partaker of his own order. And he, learning diligently, and understanding their essence, and partaking their nature, resolved to pierce and break through the circumference of the circles, and to understand the power of him that sits upon the fire. And having already all power of mortal things, of the living, and of the unreasonable creatures of the world, stooped down and peeped through the harmony, and breaking through the strength of the circles, so showed and made manifest the downward born nature, the fair and beautiful shape or form of God, which, when he saw, having in itself the insatiable beauty, and all operations of the 7 governors, and the form or shape of God, he smiled for love, as if he had seen the shape or likeness in the water, or the shadow upon the earth of the fairest human form. And seeing in the water a shape like unto himself, in himself he loved it, and would cohabitate with it, and immediately upon the resolution, ensured the operation, and brought forth the unreasonable image or shape. Nature presently laying hold of what it loved so much, did wholly wrap herself about it, and they were mingled, for they loved one another. And from this cause man above all things that live upon earth is double, mortal because of his body, and immortal because of the substantial man. For being immortal, and having power of all things, he yet suffers mortal things, and such as they are also subject to fate or destiny. And therefore, being above all harmony, he is made and became a servant to harmony. He is a hermaphrodite, or male and female, and watchful. He is governed by and subject to a Father, that is both male and female, and watchful. After these things I said, You are my mind, and I am in love with reason. Then said the poemander, This is the mystery that to this day is hidden and kept secret. For nature being mingled with man, brought forth a wonder most great. For he having seen the nature of the harmony of the 7, from whom I told you, the fire and the spirit, nature continued not, but forthwith brought forth 7 men, all hermaphrodites and sublime, or on high, according to the natures of the 7 governors. And after these things, O Poemander, I said, I am now come into a great desire and longing to hear. Do not digress or leave. But he said, Keep silence, for I have not yet finished the first speech. I said, Behold, I am silent. The generation, therefore, of these 7 was after this manner, the air being feminine, and the water desirous of copulation, took from the fire its ripeness, and from the ethereal spirit, and so nature produced bodies after the species in shape of men. And man was made of life and light, into soul and mind, of life the soul, of light the mind. And so all the members of the sensible world continued unto a period of the end, bearing rule and generating. Hear now the rest of that speech you so desire to hear. When that period was fulfilled, the bonds of all things was loosed and untied by the will of God, for all living creatures, being hermaphrodites, or male and female twain, were loosed and untied together with man, and so the males were apart from themselves, and the females likewise. And straightway God said to the holy word, Increase in increasing, and multiplying in multitude, all you, my creatures and creations. And let him that is imbued with a mind know himself to be immortal, and that the cause of death is the love of the body, and let him learn all things that are. When he had said thus, Providence by fate of harmony made the mixtures and established the generations, and all things were multiplied according to their kind. And he knew that himself came at great length to the possessed of every substantial good. But he that through the error of vanity loved the body, continues wandering in darkness, sensible, suffering the things of death. I said, But why do they that are so ignorant sin so much, that they should therefore be deprived of immortality? He replied, You seem not to have understood what I have heard. I said, I seem so to you, but I both understand and remember them. He said, I am glad for your sake if thou understood them. I replied, Tell me, why are they worthy of death, they that are in death? He replied, Because there goes a sad and dismal darkness before its body, of which darkness is the moist nature, of which moist nature the body consists in the sensible world, from where death is derived. Do you understand? I replied, But why? Or how does he that understands himself go or pass into God? He replied, That which is the word of God says, said I, because the Father of all things consists of life and light, whereas man is made. I replied, You reply very well. He said, God and the Father is light and life, of which man is made. If therefore you learn and believe yourself to be the life and the light, you will pass again into life. I replied, But yet tell me more, O my mind, how I shall go into life. He replied, God says, Let man imbued with a mind take heed, consider, and know himself well. I asked, Have not all men a mind? He said, Take heed what you say, for I, the mind, come into men that are holy and good, pure and merciful, and that live piously and religiously, and my presence is a help unto them. And forthwith they know all things, and lovingly they supplicate and propagate the Father, and blessing him, they give him thanks and sing hymns unto him, being ordered and directed by filial affection and natural love. And before they give up their bodies to the death of them, they hate their senses, knowing their works and operations. Rather I that am the mind itself will not suffer the operations or works, which happen or belong to the body, to be finished and brought to perfection in them. But being the porter or dew-keeper, I will shut up the entrances of evil, and cut off the thoughtfulness desires of filthy works. But to the foolish, and evil, and wicked, and envious, covetous, and murderous, and profane, I am far off, giving place to the revenging demon, which applying unto him the sharpness of fire, torment such a man's senses, and arm him the more all wickedness, that he may obtain the greater punishment. And such a man never ceases, having unfulfilled desires and unsatisfied concupiscence, and always fighting in darkness, for the demon always afflicts and torments him continually, and increases the fire upon him more and more. I asked, Have you, O mind, most excellently taught me all things as I desired? But tell me, moreover, after the return is made, what then? He replied, First of all, in the resolution of the material body, the body itself is given up to alteration, and the form which it had becomes invisible, and the idle manners are permitted and left to the demon, and the senses of the body return into their origins, being parts, and again made up into operations. And anger and concupiscence go into the brutish or unreasonable nature, and the rest strive upward by harmony. And to the first zone it gives the power it had of increasing and diminishing. To the second, the machinations or plotting of evils, and one effectual deceit or craft. To the third, the idle deceit of concupiscence. To the fourth, the desire of rule and insatiable ambition. To the fifth, profane pride, the headlong rashness of confidence. To the sixth, evil and ineffectual gluttony. To the seventh zone, subtle falsehood, always laying in wait. And then, being made naked of all the operations of harmony, it comes to the eighth nature, having its proper power, and sings praises to the Father with all things that are, and all that they are present rejoice, and congratulate the coming of it. And being made like to them with whom it converses, it hears also the powers that are above the eighth nature, singing praise to God in a certain voice that is strange to them. And then in order they return unto the Father, and themselves deliver themselves to the power, and becoming powers, they are part of God. This is the good, and to them that know, to be desired. Furthermore, why do you say, What rests? But that understanding all men thou become a guide, and a leader to them that are worthy, that the kind of humanity or mankind may be saved by God. When Poemander had thus said this to me, he was mingled among the powers. But I, giving thanks, and blessing the Father of all things, rose up, being enabled by him, and taught the nature of the whole, and having seen the greatest sight or spectacle. And I began to preach unto men the beauty and fairness of piety and knowledge. O people, men, born and made of the earth, which have given yourselves over to drunkenness and sleep, and to the ignorance of God, be sober, and cease your surfeit, by which you are allured and visited by brutish and unreasonable sleep. And they that heard me come willingly and with one accord. And then I said further, Why, O men of the offspring of earth, why have you delivered yourselves unto death, having power to partake of immortality? Repent and change your minds, you that have together walked in error, and have been darkened in ignorance. Depart from that dark light, be partakers of immortality, and forsake corruption. And some of them that heard me, mocking and scorning, went away, and delivered themselves up to the way of death. But others, casting themselves down before my feet, besought me that they might be taught. But I, causing them to rise up, became a guide of mankind, teaching them the reasons how, and by what means they may be saved. And I sowed in them the words of wisdom, and nourished them with the ambrosia of immortality. And when it was evening, and the brightness of the same began wholly to go down, I commanded them to go down. I commanded them to give thanks to God. And when they had finished their thanksgiving, everyone returned to his own lodging. But I wrote in myself the bounty and benevolence of the Poemander, and being filled with what I had most desired, I was exceedingly glad. For the sleep of the body was the sober watchfulness of the mind, and the shutting of my eyes the true sight, and my silence great with child, and full of good, and the pronouncing of my words the blossoms and fruits of good things. And thus it came to pass, which I received from my mind, that is, Poemander, the Lord of the Word, whereby I became inspired by God with the truth. For with cause, with my soul and my whole strength, I give praise and blessing unto God the Father. Holy is God, the Father of all things. Holy is God, whose will is performed and accomplished by his own powers. Holy is God, that determines to be known and is known by his own. Holy art thou, that by your words has established all things. Holy art thou, of whom all of nature is image. Holy art thou, whom nature did not form. Holy art thou, that are stronger than all power. Holy art thou, that are stronger than all excellency. Holy art thou, that are better than all praise. Accept these reasonable sacrifices from a pure soul and a heart that stretched out to you, unspeakable, unutterable, to be praised with silence. I beseech you that I may never err from the knowledge of you, Lord. Look mercifully upon me and enable me, and enlighten me with this grace, those that are in ignorance, the brothers of my kind, but your sons. Therefore I believe in you, and bear witness, and go into the life and light. Blessed art thou, O Father, thy man that would be sanctified with you, as you have given him all the power. Chapter 3, the Holy Sermon. The glory of all things, God, and that which is divine, and the divine nature, the beginning of things that are. God and the mind, and nature, and matter, movement, and necessity, and the end and change. For there was in the chaos an infinite darkness in the abyss or bottomless depth, and water, and a subtle in spirit, intelligible in power. And there went out the holy light, and the elements were coagulated from the sand out of the moist substance. And all the gods distinguished the nature full of seeds. And when all things were determined and unraveled, the light things were divided on high, and the heavy things were founded upon the moist sand, all things being terminated or divided by fire, and being sustained or hung up by the Spirit, they were so carried, and the heaven was seen in 7 circles. And the gods were seen in their ideas of the stars, with all their signs, and the stars were numbered with the God in them. And the sphere that was boarded with air, carried about in a circular motion by the Spirit of God. And every God, by his internal power, did that which was commanded him. And there were made 4-footed things, and creeping things, and such as live in the water, and such as fly, and every fruitful seed, and grass, and the flowers of all plants, all which had sown themselves the seeds of regeneration. As also the generations of men, to the knowledge of the divine works, and a livelier working testimony of nature, and a multitude of men, and the dominion of all things under heaven, and the knowledge of all good things, to be increased and increasing, and multiplied in multitude. And every soul and flesh, by the wonderful workings of the gods and the circles, to the beholding of heaven, the gods' divine works, the operations of nature, and for signs of good things, and the knowledge of the divine power, and to find out every cunning work of good things. So it begins to live in them, and to be wise according to the operation of the course of the circular gods, and to be resolved into that which shall be great monuments and the memory of the cunning works done upon earth, leaving them to be read by the darkness of times. And every generation of living flesh, of fruit, seed, and all handicrafts, though they may be lost, must of necessity be renewed by the renovation of the gods, and of the nature of a circle moving in number. For it is a divine thing that every worldly temperature should be renewed by nature, for in that which is divine is nature also established. Yesterday's speech, O Aesculapius, I dedicated to you. This day it is fit to dedicate to Tot, because it is an epitome of those general speeches which were spoken to him. God, therefore, and the Father, and the good, O Tot, have the same nature, or rather also the same act and operation. For there is one name or appellation of nature or increase, which concerns things changeable, and another about things unchangeable, and about things immovable, that is to say, things divine and mundane, every one of that which himself will have to so be. But action or operation is of another thing, or elsewhere, as we have taught in other things, divine and mundane, which must here also be understood. For his operation or act is his will, and his essence to will all things to be. For what is God and the Father and the good, but the being of all things that yet are not, and the existence itself of things that are? This is God, this is the Father, this is the good, by which no thing is present or approaches. For the world and the Son, which is also a Father by participation, is not for all that equally the cause of good, and of life to living creatures. And if this be so, he is altogether constrained by the will of the good, without which it is not possible either to be or to be begotten or made. But the Father is the cause of his children, who hath a will both to sow and nourish that which is good by the Son. For good is always active or busy in making, and this cannot be in any other but in him that takes nothing, and yet wills all things to be. For I will not say, O tot, making them, for he that makes is defective in much time, in which sometimes he makes not, as also of quality and quantity. For sometimes he makes those things that have quantity and quality, and sometimes the contrary. But God is the Father and the good, in being all things. For he both will be this and is it, and yet all this for himself and him that can see it. For all things else are for this. It is the property of good to be known. This is the good, O tot. He said, You have filled us, O Father, with sight both good and fair, and the eye of mind is almost become more holy by the sight. I replied, I wonder not at it, for the sight of good is not like the beam of the sun, which being of a fiery shining brightness makes the eye blind by its excessive light that gazes upon it. Rather the contrary, for it enlightens, and so much increases the light of the eye, as any man is able to receive the influence of this intelligible clarity. For it is more swift and sharp to pierce, and innocent or harmless withal, and full of immortality. And they are capable, and can draw any store of this spectacle and sight, do many times fall asleep from the body, into this most fair and beauteous vision. These things Celsius and Saturn are progenitors obtained unto. He said, I would we also, Father, could do so. I replied, I wish we could, O Son, but for the present we are less intent to the vision, and cannot yet open the eyes of our mind to behold the incorruptible and incomprehensible beauty of that good. But then we shall see it, when we have nothing at all to say of it. For the knowledge of it is a divine silence, and the rest of all senses, for neither can he that understands that understand anything else, nor he that sees it see anything else, nor hear any other thing, nor even move the body. For shining steadfastly upon and round the whole mind, it enlightens all the soul, and losing it from the bodily senses and motions, it draws it from the body, and changes it wholly into the essence of God. For it is possible for the soul, O Son, to be deified while it yet lodges in the body of the man, if it contemplates the beauty of the good. He asked, How do you mean deifying, Father? I replied, There are differences of every soul. He said, But how do you again divide the changes? I replied, Have you not heard in the general speeches that from one soul of the universe are all those souls which in the world are tossed up and down and severally divided? Of these souls there are many changes, some into a more fortunate estate, and some quite the contrary. For they which are of creeping things are changed into those of watery things, and those of things living in the water to those of things living upon the land. And airy ones are changed into men and human souls that lay hold of immortality and are changed into demons. And so they go on into the sphere or region of the fixed God. For there are two choirs or companies of gods, one of them that wander, and another of them that are fixed. And so this is the perfect glory of the soul. But the soul entering into the body of a man, if it continues to do evil, shall neither taste of immortality, nor is partaker of the good. But being drawn back the same way, it returns into degeneration, and this is the condemnation of an evil soul. And the wickedness of a soul is ignorance, for the soul that knows nothing of the things that are, neither the nature of them, nor that which is good, but is blinded, rushes and dashes against the bodily passions, and unhappy as it is, and not knowing itself, It serves strange bodies and evil ones, carrying the body as a burden, and not ruling it, but being ruled by it, and this is the mischief of the soul. On the contrary, the virtue of the soul is knowledge, for he that knows is both good and religious, and already divine. He asked, "But who is such a man, O Father?" I replied, "He that neither speaks nor hears many things. For he, O Son, that hears two speeches or hearings, fights in the shadow. For God and the Father and good is neither spoken nor heard. This being so in all things that are the senses, because they cannot be without them. But knowledge differs much from the sense, for sense is of things that surmount it, but knowledge is the end of sense. Knowledge is the gift of God, for all knowledge is intangible, but uses the mind as an instrument, as the mind uses the body. Therefore, both intelligible and material things go both of them into bodies. All physical things must exist in this contrary state of dichotomy, and it is impossible it should be otherwise." He asked, "Who, therefore, is this material God?" I replied, "The fair and beautiful world, and yet it is not good, for it is material and easily corrupted. Nay, it is the first of all corrupted things, and the second of things that are, and needy or wanting for something else. And it was once made, as always is, and is ever in generation, and made and continually generates physical things. For it is changeable, and every material motion is generation. But the intellectual stability moves the material motion after this manner. Because the world is a sphere, that is, a head, and above the head there is nothing material, as beneath the feet there is nothing intellectual. The whole universe is material. The mind is the head, and it is moved spherically, that is, like a head. Whatever, therefore, is joined or united to the membrane or film of the head, where the soul is immortal. And as in the soul of a made body, has the soul full of the body. But those that are farther from that membrane have a body full of soul. The whole is a living white, and therefore consists of both the material and intellectual. And the world is the first, and man is the second living thing after the world. But the first of things that are mortal, and therefore has whatsoever benefit of the soul all the others have. And yet for all of this, he is not only not good, but flatly evil, as being mortal. For the world is not good, as it is corruptible, nor evil, as it is immortal. But man is evil, both as he is corruptible and as he is mortal. But the soul of man is carried in this manner. The mind is in reason, reason in the soul, soul in the spirit, spirit in the body. The spirit being diffused and going through the veins and arteries and blood, both moves the living creature, and after a certain manner causes it to live. Wherever some also have thought the soul to be blood, being deceived in nature, not knowing that first the spirit must return into the soul, and then the blood is congealed, and the veins and arteries emptied, and then the living thing dies, and this is the death of the body. All things depend of one beginning, and the beginning depends of that which is undivided and alone. And the beginning is moved, that it may again be a beginning, but that which is one stands and abides, and is not moved. There are, therefore, these three, God the Father, and the good, the world, and man. God has the world, and the world has man, and the world is the Son of God, and man, as it were, the offspring of the world. For God is not ignorant of man, but knows him perfectly, and will be known by him. This only is healthful to man and the knowledge of God. This is the return of Olympus. By this only the soul is made of good, and not sometimes good, and sometimes evil, but of necessity good. He asked, "What do you mean, O Father?" I replied, "Consider, O Son, the soul of a child, when as it yet has received no dissolution of its body, which is not yet grown, but is very small. How then, if it looks upon itself, it sees beautiful, and not having been as of yet spotted with the passions of the body, but as it were depending yet upon the soul of the world. But when the body is grown and distracts the soul, it engenders forgetfulness, and partakes no more of the fair and good, and forgetfulness is evilness. The like also happens to them that go out of the body. For when the soul runs back into itself, the spirit is contracted into the blood, and the soul made into the spirit. But the mind, being made pure and free from these vestiges, and being divine by nature, taking a fiery body, goes abroad in every place, leaving the soul to judgment, and to the punishment it thus deserves. He asked, "Why do you say, O Father, that the mind is separated from the soul, and the soul from the spirit? When even now you said the soul was the clothing or apparel of the mind, and the body of the soul." I replied, "O son, he that hears must understand, and conspire in thought with him that speaks. Yes, he must have his hearing swifter and sharper than the voice of the speaker. The disposition of these vestiges, or covers, is done in an earthly body, for it is impossible that the mind should establish or rest itself naked, and of itself as an earthly body. Neither is the earthly body able to bear such immortality, and therefore, that it might suffer so great virtue, the mind compacted, as it were, and took to itself the passible body of the soul, as a covering or clothing. And the soul, being also in some sort divine, uses the spirit as her minister or servant, and the spirit governs the living things. When therefore the mind is separated, and departs from the earthly body, presently it puts on its fiery coat, which it could not do before, having to dwell in an earthly body. For the earth cannot suffer fire, for it is all burned of a small spark. Therefore is the water poured round the earth, as a wall or a defense, to withstand the flame of fire. But the mind, being the sharp or swift of all divine cognition, and more swift than all the elements, has the fire for its body. For the mind, which is the workman of all, uses the fire as his instrument of his workmanship, and he that is the workman of all uses it to the making of all things, as it is used by man for the making of all earthly things only. For the mind that is upon earth, void or naked of fire, cannot do the business of men, nor that which is otherwise the affairs of God. But the soul of man, and yet not every one, but that which is pious and religious, is angelic and divine. And such a soul, after it is departed from the body, having striven the strife of piety, becomes either mind or God. And the strife of piety is to know God, and to injure no man, and this way it becomes mind. But the impious soul abides in its own offenses, punished by itself, and seeking an earthly and physical body to enter into. For no other body is capable of a mundane soul, neither is it lawful for a man's soul to fall into the body of an unreasonable living thing, for it is the decree of God to preserve a human soul from such a great reproach. He asked, "How then is the soul of man punished, O Father, and what is its greatest torment?" I replied, "Impiety, my son, for what fire has so great a flame as it? Or what biting beast does so tear the body as it does the soul? Or do you not see how many evils the wicked soul suffers, roaring and crying out, 'I am burned, I am consumed, I know not what I say or do, I am devoured, unhappy wretched, of all the evils that surround and lay hold upon me, miserable that I am, I neither hear nor see anything.' These are the voices of a punished and tormented soul, and not as many. And you, O my son, think that the soul going out of the body grows brutish or enters a beast, which is a very great error, for the soul is rather punished after this manner. For the mind, when it is ordered or appointed to get a fiery body for the services of God, coming down into the wicked soul, torments it with the whips of its sins, with which the wicked soul, being scourged, turned itself to murders and lies and blasphemies and various violence and other things by which men are injured. But into a pious soul the mind enters, leads it into the light of knowledge. And such a soul is never satisfied with singing praises to God and speaking well of all men, both in words and deeds always doing good, in imitation of her Father. Therefore, O son, we must give thanks and pray that we may obtain a good mind. The soul, therefore, may be altered or changed into the better, but into the worse it is impossible. But there is a communion of souls, and those of gods communicate with those men, and those of men with those of beasts, and the better always take of the worse, gods of men, men of brute beasts, but God for all, for he is the best of all, and all things are less than he. Therefore is the world subject unto God, man unto the world, and unreasonable things to man. But God is above all and about all, and the beams of God are operations, and the beams of the world are natures, and the beams of man are arts and sciences. And operations do act by the world, and upon man by the natural beams of the world, but natures work by the elements, and man by arts and sciences. And this is the government of the whole, depending upon the nature of the one, and piercing or coming down by one mind, than which nothing is more divine and more efficacious or operative, and nothing is more uniting. The communion of gods to men, and of men to gods. This is the good mind, blessed, happy soul that is the fullest of it, an unhappy soul that is empty of it. He asked, "And how, Father?" I replied, "Know, my son, that every soul has the good mind, for of it that is what we now speak, and not that of the minister of whom we said before, that he was sent from the judgment. For the soul without the mind can neither say nor do anything, for many times the mind flies away from the soul, and in that hour the soul neither sees nor hears, but it is like an unreasonable thing, so great is the power of the mind. But neither causes it to be idle or a lazy soul, but leaves such a soul fastened to the body, and by it is pressed down. And such a soul, O son, has no mind, wherefore neither must such one be called a man. For man is a divine living thing, and is not to be compared to any brute beast that lives upon earth, but to call them that are above in heaven, that are called the gods. Rather, if we shall be bold to speak the truth, he that is a man is indeed above them, or at least they are equal in power one to the other. For none of the things in heaven will come down upon earth and leave the limits of heaven, but a man ascends up to heaven and measures it. And he knows what things are on high and what is below, and learns all other things exactly. And that which is the greatest of all, he leaves not the earth, and yet is above, so great is the greatness of his nature. Wherefore we must be bold to say that an earthly man is a mortal man, and the heavenly God is an immortal man. Therefore by these two things are all things governed, the world and man, but they and all things else of that which is singular, that God is not manifest, and yet is most manifest. This discourse I will also make to you, O Tot, that you might not be ignorant of a more excellent name of God. But you should contemplate in your mind how that which is to many seems hidden and not manifest may be most manifest to you. For if it were not all, if it were apparent, for whatsoever is apparent is generated or made, for it was made manifest, but that which is not manifest is eternal. For it need not be manifested, for it always was and is. And he makes all things manifest, being not manifest, as being always, and making other things manifest, he has not made manifest. God is not made, yet in fantasy he imagines all things, or in appearance he makes them appear. For appearance is only of those things that are generated or made, for appearance is nothing but generation. But he that is one, that is not made nor generated, is also an apparent and not manifest. But making all things appear, he appears in all and by all. But especially he is manifested to or in those things wherein he makes himself apparent. You, therefore, O Tot, my son, pray first to the Lord and Father, and to the singular, and to the one, from whom one is to be merciful to thee, that you may know and understand so great a God, that he would shine one of his beams upon you and your understanding. For only the understanding see that which is not manifest or apparent, as being itself not manifest or apparent, and if you are able, it will appear to the eyes of your mind. For the Lord, void of envy, appears through the whole world. You may see the intelligence, and take it into your hands, and contemplate the image of God. But if that which is in you be not known or apparent unto you, how shall he in you be seen, and appear to you by the eyes? But if you will see him, consider and understand the sun. Consider the course of the moon. Consider the order of the stars. Who is he that keeps order? For all order is circumscribed, or terminated in number and place. The sun is the greatest of the gods in heaven, to whom all the heavenly gods give place, as to a king and potentate. And yet he, being such a one, greater than the earth or the sea, is content to suffer infinite lesser stars to walk and move above himself. Whom does he fear the while, O sun? Every one of these stars that are in heaven do not make the like, or an equal course. Who is it that has prescribed every one the manner and the greatness of their course? This bear that turns round about itself, and carries round the whole world with her, who possessed and made such an instrument? Who has set the bounds to the sea? Who has established the earth? For there is somebody, O Tot, that is the maker and the Lord of these things. For it is impossible that either place or number or measure should be observed without a maker. For no order can be made by disorder or disproportion. I wish it were possible for you, O sun, to have wings, and to fly into the air, and be taken up into the midst between heaven and earth, to see the stability of the earth, the fluidity of the sea, the courses of the rivers, the vastness of the air, the sharpness and swiftness of the fire, the motion of the stars, and the speediness of the heavens, by which it goes round about all these. O sun, what a happy sight it were, at one instant, to see all these things, that which is immovable moved, and that which is hidden appear and be manifest. And if you would see and behold this workman, even by mortal things that are upon earth, and in the deep, consider, O sun, how man is made and framed in the womb, and examine diligently the skill and cunning of the workman, and learn who it was that wrought and fashioned the beautiful and divine shape of man, who circumscribed and marked out his eyes, who bored his nostrils and ears, who opened his mouth, who stretched out and tied together his sinews, who channeled the veins, who hardened and made strong the bones, who clothed the flesh with skin, who divided the fingers and joints, who flattened and made broad the soles of the feet, who dug the pores, who stretched out the spleen, who made the heart like a pyramid, who made the liver broad, who made the lungs spongy and full of holes, who made the belly large, who set to outward view the more honorable parts and hid the filthy ones. See how many arts in one matter, and how many works in one superscription, and all exceedingly beautiful, and all done in measure, and yet all differing. Who has made all these things? What mother? What father? Save only God that is not manifest, that made all things by his own will. And no man says that a statue or an image is made without a carver or a painter. And was this workmanship made without a workman? O great blindness! O great impiety! And O great ignorance! Never, O sun Tot, can you deprive the workmanship of the workman. Rather, it is the best name of all the names of God, to call him the Father of all. For so he is alone, and this is his work, to be the Father. And if you force me to say anything more boldly, it is his essence to be pregnant, or great with all things, and to make them. And as without a maker it is impossible that anything should be made, so it is that he should not always be, and always be making all things in heaven, in the air, in the earth, in the deep, in the whole world, and in every part of the whole, that is or that is not. For there is nothing in the whole world that is not himself, both the things that are and the things that are not. For the things that are manifest he has made manifest, and the things that are not he has hidden in himself. This is God that is better than any name. This is he that is secret. This is he that is most manifest. This is he that is to be seen by the mind. This is he that is visible to the eye. This is he that has no body, and this is he that has many bodies. Rather, there is nothing of anybody which he is not. For he is alone in all things. And for this cause he has many names, because he is the one Father, and therefore he has no name, because he is the Father of all. Who therefore can bless you, or give thanks for you, or to you? Which way shall I look when I praise you? Upward? Downward? Outward? Inward? For about these things there is no manner nor place, nor anything else of all things that are. But all things are in you, all things from you. You give all things and take nothing, for you have all things, and there is nothing that you do not possess. When shall I praise you, O Father? For it is neither possible to comprehend your hour nor your time. For what shall I praise you? For what you have made, or for what you have not made? For those things you have made manifested, or for those things you have hidden? Wherefore shall I praise you, as being of myself, or having anything of my own, or rather being another's? For you are what I am. You are what I do. You are what I say. You are all things. There is nothing else you are not. You are you, all that is made, all that is not made. The mind that understands. The Father that makes and frames. The good that works. The good that does all things. Of the matter, the most subtle and slender is air. Of the air, the soul. Of the soul, the mind. Of the mind, God. Chapter 6. That God alone is good. God, O Asclepius, is in nothing but in God alone, or rather God himself is always good. And if it be so, then must he be an essence or a substance, void of all motion and generation? But nothing is void or empty of him. And this essence has in itself a stable and firm operation, wanting nothing, most full and giving abundantly. One thing is the beginning of all things, for it gives all things, and when I name the good, I mean that which is always together and always good. This is present to none but God alone, for he wants nothing that he should have desire, nor can anything be taken from him that the loss would grieve him, for sorrow is a part of evilness. Nothing is stronger than he, that he should be opposed by it, nor nothing equal to him, that he should be in love with it. Nothing unheard of to be angry, with nothing wiser to be envious at. And none of these being in his essence, what remains but only the good? For as in this, being such an essence, there is none of the evils, so in none of all other things shall the good be found. For in all other things are all those other things, as well as in the small as the great, and as well in the particulars and in this living creature, the greater and mightiest of all. For all things that are made or generated are full of will, generation itself being by a will. And where will is, there is not the good. Where the good is, there is no will. Where it is day, it is not night. Where it is night, it is not day. Wherefore it is impossible that in generation should be the good, but only in that which is not generated or made. Yet as the participation of all things is in the matter bound, so also of that which is good. After this manner is the world good, as it makes all things, and in the part of making or doing. It is good, but in all other things not good. For it is destructible and movable, and the maker of destructible things. In man also the good is ordered, in comparison of that which is evil. For that which is not very evil is here good, and that which is here called good is the least particle or proportion of evil. It is impossible, therefore, that the good should be here pure from evil. For here the good enlarges evil, and growing evil, it does not still abide good, and not abiding good, it becomes evil. Therefore in God alone is the good, or rather God is the good. Therefore, O Asclepius, there is nothing in men but the name of good. The thing itself is not, for it is impossible. For a material body receives, is not as being on every side encompassed and coacted with evils and labors, and griefs and desires, and wrath and deceits, and foolish opinions. And in that which is the worst of all, Aesculapius, every one of the forenamed things is here believed to be the greatest good, especially that supreme mischief, gluttony, and the ringleader of all evils. Error is here the absence of the good. And I give thanks unto God, that concerning the knowledge of good put this assurance in my mind, that it is impossible it should be in the world. For the world is the fullness of evilness, but God is the fullness of good, or good of God. For the emanations of all appearing beautiful are in the essence more pure and more sincere, and more peradventure, they are always the essences of it. For we must be bold to say, Aesculapius, that the essence of God, if he have an essence, is that which is fair or beautiful, but no good is comprehended in this world. For all things that are subject to the eye are idols, as it were shadows, but those things that are not subject to the eye are eternal, especially the essence of fair and the good. And as the eye cannot see God, so neither the fair and the good. For those are the parts of God that partake the nature of the whole, proper and familiar unto him alone, inseparable, most lovely, whereof either God is enamored, or they are enamored of God. If you can understand God, you can understand the fair and the good, which is the most shining and enlightening, and most enlightened by God. For that beauty is above comparison, and that good is as inimitable as God himself. As therefore you understand God, so understand the fair and the good, for these are incommunicable to any other living creature, because they are inseparable from God. If you seek concerning God, you seek also after the fair, for there is one way which leads to the same thing, that is piety with knowledge. Wherefore they that are ignorant, and go not in the way of piety, dare call men fair and good, never seeing so much as in a dream what good is, but being consumed and bound by all evil. And believing that the evil is the good, they, by that means, both use it insatiably and are afraid to be deprived of it. And therefore they strive, by all possible means, that they may only not have it, but also increase it. As such, O Aesculapius, are the good and fair things of men, which we can neither love nor hate, for this is the hardest thing of all, that we have need of them and cannot live without them. Chapter 7. His secret sermon in the Mount of Regeneration, profession of silence. In the general speeches, O Father, discoursing of the divinity, you spoke enigmatically and did not clearly reveal your purpose, saying that no man can be saved before regeneration. And when I did humbly entreat you, at the going up to the mountain after you spoke to me, having a great desire to learn this argument of regeneration, because among all the rest I am ignorant only of this, you told me you would teach me, when I would estrange myself from the world, whereupon I made myself ready and have vindicated the understanding that is in me, for the deceit of the world. Now then, correct my ignorance, and as you said, instruct me about the regeneration, either by word of mouth or secretly. For I know not, O Trismegistus, of what substance or what seed or what womb a man is of thus born. He replied, O son, this wisdom is to be understood in silence, and the seed is the true good. Tat replied, Who sows it, O father? For I am utterly ignorant and doubtful. He replied, The will of God, O son. And what manner of man is he that is thus born? For in this point I am clean deprived of the essence of understanding. He replied, The Son of God will be another. God made the universe, that in everything consists of all powers. Tot said, Tell me a riddle, father, and do not speak as father to a son. He replied, Son, things of this kind are not taught, but are by God, when he pleases brought to remembrance. Tot said, You speak of things strange, or far-fetched and impossible, father, and therefore I will directly contradict them. He replied, Will you test a stranger, son, to your father's kind? Tot said, "Do not envy me, father, or pardon me. I am your natural son. Discourse unto me the manner of regeneration." He replied, "What shall I say, O my son? I have nothing to say more than this, that I see in myself a perfect sight, made by the mercy of God, and I am gone out of myself into an immortal body, and am not now what I was before, but was begotten in mind. This thing is not taught, nor is it to be seen in this formed element, for which the first compound form was neglected by me, and that I am now separated from it, for I have both the touch and the measure of it, yet am I now estranged from them. You see, O son, with your eyes, but though you never look so steadfastly upon me with the body and the bodily sight, you cannot see nor understand what I am now." Tat said, "You have driven me, O father, into no small fury and distraction of mind, for I do not now see myself." He replied, "I would, O son, that you also projected from your bodily form, like them that dream in their sleep." Tat said, "Then tell me this, who is the author and the maker of regeneration?" He replied, "The child of God, one man by the will of God." Tat replied, "Now, O father, you have put me to silence forever, and all my former thoughts have quite left and forsaken me, for I see the greatness and shape of things here below, and nothing but falsehood in all of them. And so therefore this mortal form is daily changed, and turned by time into increase or decrease, as being falsehood. What therefore is true, O Trismegistus?" He replied, "That, O my son, which is not troubled nor bound, not colored, not calculated, not changed, that which is naked, high, comprehensible only of itself, unalterable, intangible." Tat said, "Now I am mad indeed, O father, for when I thought me to have been made a wise man by you with these thoughts, you have instead made me dumb." He replied, "Yet is it so as I say, O son? He that looks only upon that which is ascending, that which is descending, that which is moist as water, and that which blows, or is subject to blast as air, how can he sensibly understand with that which is neither hard nor moist, nor tangible nor sublime, seeing it only understood in power and operation? But I beseech and pray to the mind, which alone can understand the generation which is in God." Tat said, "Then I am, O father, utterly unable to do it." He replied, "God forbid, son. Rather draw God close to you, and he will come. Be but willing, and it shall be done. Quiet the senses of the body, purging yourself from the unreasonable, brutish torments of matter." Tat asked, "Have I any tormentors in myself, father?" He replied, "Yes, and there are not a few but many, and fearful ones." Tat said, "I do not know them, father." He replied, "One torment, son, is ignorance, a second, sorrow, a third, intemperance, a fourth, concupiscence, a fifth, injustice, a sixth, covetousness, a seventh, deceit, an eighth, envy, a ninth, fraud, a 10th, wrath, an 11th, rashness, a 12th, maliciousness. They are in number 12, and under these many more. Some which through the prison of the body do force the inwardly placed man to suffer sensibly. And they do not suddenly or easily depart from him that has obtained mercy of God. And in this consists both the manner and the reason of regeneration. For the rest, O son, hold your peace, and praise God in silence. And by that, the means of the mercy of God will not cease or be wanting in us. Therefore rejoice, my son, from henceforth, being purged by the powers of God to the knowledge of truth. For the revelation of God is to come to us, and when that came, all ignorance was cast out. The knowledge of joy is come unto us, and when that comes, sorrow shall fly away to them that are capable. I call unto joy the power of temperance, a power whose virtue is most sweet. Let us take her unto ourselves, O Son, most willingly. For how at her coming will she put away intemperance? Now I call forth continence, the power which is over concupiscence. This, O Son, is the stable and firm foundation of justice. For see how without labor she can chase away injustice, and we are justified, O Son, when injustice is away. The sixth virtue which comes into us I call communion, which is against covetousness. And when that is gone, I call truth, and when she comes, error and deceit depart. See, O Son, how the good is fulfilled by the access of truth. For by this means envy is gone from us. For truth is accompanied with the good, together also with life and light. And there came no more any torment of darkness, but being overcome, they all fled away silently and with great anger. You have understood, O Son, the manner of regeneration. For upon the coming of these 10, the intellectual generation is perfected, and then it drives away the 12 vices, and we have seen it in the generation itself. Whoever therefore has of mercy obtained this generation, which is according to God, he, leaving all bodily sense, knows himself to consist of divine things and rejoices, being made by God stable and incorruptible. Tat said, O Father, I conceive and understand, not by the sight of my eyes, but by the intellectual operation, which is by the powers. I am in heaven, in the earth, in the water, in the air. I am in living creatures, in plants, in the womb, everywhere. Yet tell me further this one thing. How are the torments of darkness, being in number 12, driven away and expelled by the 10 powers? What is the manner of it, Trismegistus? He replied, This tabernacle, O Son, consists of the zodiacal cycle, and this consisting of 12 numbers, the idea of one. But all formed nature admits various conjunctions to the deceiving of mankind. And though they be different in themselves, yet are they united in practice, and they are also indeterminate. Therefore, with good reason do they make their departure, being driven away by the 10 powers, that is to say, by the dead. For the number of 10, O Son, is the begetter of souls, and their life and light are united, where the number of unity is born of the Spirit. Therefore, according to reason, unity has the number of 10, and the number of 10 has thus unity. Tat said, O Father, I now see the universe and myself in the mind. He replied, This is regeneration, O Son, that we should not any longer fix our imagination upon this body, subject to the 3 dimensions, according to the speech which we now have commented, that we may not at all cause chaos in the universe. Tot said, Tell me, O Father, this body that consists of powers, shall it ever admit of dissolution? He replied, Good words, O Son, and speak not things impossible, for by that you would sin, and the eye of your mind grow wicked. The sensible body of nature is far from the essential generation, for that is subject to dissolution. But this is not, and that is mortal, but this is immortal. Do you not know that you are born a god, and the son of the One, as I am? Tot said, How fain would I, O Father, hear that praise given by a hymn, which you stated that you heard from the powers when I was in the octanary. He replied, As Poemander said, by way of oracle to the octanary, you do well, O Son, to desire the solution of the tabernacle, for you are purified. Poemander, the mind of absolute power and authority, has delivered no more unto me than those that are written, knowing that of myself I can understand all things, and hear, and understand what I wish. And he commanded me to do those things that are good, and therefore all the powers that are in me sing. Tat said, I would hear you, O Father, and understand these things. He replied, Be quiet, O Son, and now hearken to that harmonious blessing and thanksgiving, the hymn of regeneration, which I did not determine to have spoken of you so plainly, but to you in due time. Wherefore this is not taught, but hid in silence. So then, O Son, while standing in the open air, worship, looking to the north wind around the sunset. and to the south where the sun rises. And now keep silence, sun. The secret song. Let all the nature of the world entertain the hearing of this hymn. Be opened, O earth, and let all the treasure of the rain be opened. You trees, tremble not, for I will sing and praise the Lord of the creation, and the all, and the one. Be opened, you heavens. You winds, stand still, and let the immortal circle of God receive these words. For I will sing and praise him that created all things, that fixed the earth, and hung up the heavens, and commanded the sweet water to come out of the ocean, into all the world, inhabited and not inhabited, to the uses and nourishment of all beings, that commanded the fire to shine for every action, both to gods and men. Let us all together give him blessing, who flies upon the heavens, the creator of all nature. This is he that is the eye of the mind, and will accept the praise of my powers. O all the powers that are in me, praise the one and all. Sing together with my will, all you powers that are in me. O holy knowledge, being enlightened by you, I magnify the intelligible light, and rejoice in the joy of the mind. All my powers sing praise with me, and now, my continuance, sing, praise my righteousness by me, praise that which is righteous. O communion which is in me, praise the all. By me the truth sings praise to the truth, the good praises the good. O life, O light, from us unto you comes this praise and thanksgiving. I give thanks to you, O Father, the operation of my powers. I give thanks to you, O God, the power of my operations. By me the word sings praises to you. Receive by me this spoken sacrifice in words. The powers that are in me cry these things. They praise thee all. They fulfill your will. Your will and counsel is form unto you. O all, receive a spoken sacrifice from all things. O life, save all that is in us. O light, enlighten. O God, the Spirit. For the mind nourishes the word, O Spirit-bearing working man. You are God. Your servant cries these things unto you, through by the fire, by the air, by the earth, by the water, by the Spirit, by your creatures. From eternity I have found blessing and praise for you, and I have what you seek, for I rest in your will. Tot said, O Father, I see you have sung this song of praise and blessing with your whole will, and therefore have I put and placed it in my world. He replied, Say, in your intelligible world, O my son. Tat said, I do mean in my intelligible world, for by your hymn and song of praise my mind is enlightened, and gladly would I send from my understanding a thanksgiving to God. He said, Not rashly, O son. Tat said, In my mind, O father. He replied, These things that I see and contemplate, I infuse them unto you, and therefore say, O son, Tat, the author of your succeeding generations, I send unto God these spoken sacrifices. O God, you are the Father, you are the Lord, you are the mind. Accept these spoken sacrifices which you require of me. For all things are done as the mind wills. You, O Son, send this acceptable sacrifice to God, the Father of all things, but say it also, O Son, by word. Tat replied, I thank you, O Father. You have advised and instructed me to give thanks and praise. He said, I am glad, O Son, to see the truth bring forth the fruits of good things, and such immortal branches. And learn this from me. Above all other virtues entertain silence, and impart unto no man, O Son, the tradition of regeneration, lest we be reputed as troublemakers. For we both have now sufficiently meditated, I in speaking, and you in listening. And now you do intellectually know yourself and our Father. Chapter 8. The greatest evil in man is not knowing God. Where are you carried, O men, drunken with the wine of ignorance? When you cannot hold it down, why do you vomit it up again? Stand and be sober, and look up again with your eyes of your heart, and if you cannot all do so, yet do as many as you can. For the malice of ignorance surrounds all the earth, and corrupts the soul, shut up in the body, not suffering it to arrive at the heavens of salvation. Suffer not yourselves to be carried with the great stream, but stem the tide you can, lay hold of the haven of safety, and make your full course towards it. Seek still what may lead you by the hand, and conduct you to the door of truth and knowledge, where the clear light is that from which is pure from darkness, where there is not one drunken, but all are sober, and in their heart look up to him whose pleasure it is to be seen. For he cannot be heard with ears, nor seen with eyes, nor expressed in words, but only in mind and heart. But first you must tear to pieces and break through the garment that you wear, the web of ignorance, the foundation of all mischief, the shackles of corruption, the cloak of darkness, the living death, the corruptible corpse, the sepulchre, carried about with us, the domestic thief, which in what he loves us, envies us, hates us. Such is the hurtful apparel with which you are now clothed, which draws and pulls you downward by its own self, lest looking upward and seeing the beauty of truth, and the good that is reposed therein, you would hate the wickedness of this garment, and understand the traps and ambushes which it has laid for you. Therefore it labors to make good those things that seem, and are by the senses judged and determined, and the things that are true it hides, and veils in much matter, filling what it presents unto you with hateful pleasure, that you may neither hear what you should hear, nor see what you should see. Chapter 9. A Universal Sermon to Asclepius. All that is moved, O Asclepius, is it not moved in something, and by something? Asclepius replied, Yes, indeed. Must not that in which a thing is moved, of necessity, be greater than the thing that is moved? Of necessity. And that which has motion, is it not stronger than that which is moved? It is stronger. That in which a thing is moved, must it not have a nature contrary to that of the thing that is moved? It must. Is not this great world a body for which there is no greater? Yes, confessedly. And is it not solid, as filled with many great bodies, and indeed with all the bodies that are? It is so. And is not the world a body, and a body that is caused to be in motion? It is. Then what kind of place must it be, wherein it is moved, and of what nature? Must it not be much bigger, that it may receive the continuity of motion? And lest by being moved, should for want of room be constrained and hindered in the same motion? It must be immense thing, Trismegistus, but what of nature? Of a contrary nature, O Asclepius. But is not the nature of things intangible contrary to a body? Confessedly. Therefore the place is intangible, but that which is intangible is either some divine thing or God himself. And by something divine I do not mean that which was made or begotten. If therefore it be divine, it is an essence or a substance. But if it be God, it is above essence. But he is otherwise intelligible. For the first, God is intelligible, not to himself, but to us. For that which is intelligible is subject to that which understands by the senses. Therefore, God is not intelligible to himself, for not being any other thing from that which is understood, he cannot be understood by himself. But he is another thing for us, and therefore he is understood by us. If therefore place be intelligible, it is not place but God. But if God be intelligible, he is intelligible not as place, but as a capable operation. Now everything that is moved not in or by that which is moved, but in that which is fixed, and that which moves rests, for it is impossible should it be moved with it. He asked then, O Trismegistus, are those things that are here moved with the things that are themselves moved? For you said that the spheres that wander are moved by the sphere that is immovable. That, O Asclepius, is not moving together, but a counter-motion. For they are not moved after a like manner, but contrary one to the other. And contrary forms a standing resistance of motion. for the resistance is a staying of motion. Therefore the wandering spheres being moved contrary to that sphere which is fixed, shall have one from another contrarily standing of itself. For this bear you see neither rises nor goes down, but turns always in its fixed course. Do you think it moves or stands still? I think it moves, Trismegistus. What motion, O Aesculapius? A motion that is always carried about the same. But the circulation which is about the same and the motion about the same are both hidden by station. For that which is about the same forbids that which is above the same, if it resists that which is about the same. And so the contrary motion stands fast always, being always established by the contrary. But I will tell you the truth concerning this matter, an earthly example that may be seen with the eyes. Look upon any of these living creatures upon earth, as man, for example, and see him swimming. For as the water is carried one way, the movement of his feet and hands is made a station to the man, resisting the water, that he should not be carried with the water nor sink underneath it. This is a very clear example you speak of, Trismegistus. Therefore, every motion is in station, and is moved of station. The motion, then, of this world, and of every material living thing, is not to be done by those things that are without the world, but by those things within it, a soul or spirit, or some other ethereal thing, to those things that are without it. For an inanimate body does not know, much less a body if it is wholly inanimate. Aesculapius asked, What do you mean, O Trismegistus? Wood and stones and all other inanimate things, are they not moving bodies? By no means, Aesculapius, for that within the body, which moves the inanimate thing, is not the body, that moves both as well of the body, that which bears it, as the body of that which is born. For one dead or inanimate thing cannot move another. That which moves must be alive to move. You see, therefore, how the soul is surcharged when it carries two bodies. And now it is manifest that the things that are moved in something and by something. The things that are moved, O Trismegistus, must needs be moved in that which is void. Be advised, O Aesculapius, for all things that exist, there is nothing empty, only that which is utterly intangible, which is empty and a stranger to existence or being. But that which is could not be if it were not full of existence, for that which is in being or existence can never be made empty. Aesculapius asked, Are there not therefore some things that are empty, as an empty barrel, an empty pitcher, an empty paper, an empty wine-press, and many such like? Oh, the grossness of your error, O Aesculapius! Those things that are most full and replenished, do you say they are void and empty? What do you mean, Trismegistus? Is not the air a body? It is a body. Why then this body does it not pass through all things that are, and passing through them fill them? And that body, does it not consist of the mixture of four? Therefore, all those things which you called empty are full of air. Therefore, those things you called empty, rather they are hollow, not empty, for they exist and are full of air, and thus spirit. This reason is beyond all contradiction, O Trismegistus. But what shall we call the place in which the whole universe is moved? Call it incorporeal, O Aesculapius. What is its form, incorporeal or intangible? The mind and reason, the whole, wholly comprehending itself, free from all body, indivisible, invisible, impassible from a body itself, standing fast in itself, capable of all things, and that savior of the things that are. Where of the good, the truth, the archetypal light, the archetype of the soul, as it were, rays of light? Why, then, what is God? That which is none of these things, yet is, and is the cause of being to all, and every one of those things that are, for he left nothing destitute of being. And all things are made of things that are, and not of things that are not. For the things that are not have not the nature to be able to be made, and again the things that are have not the nature never to be, nor to be at all. What would you say then, say at length that God is. God is not a mind, but the cause of the mind, not a spirit, but the cause of the spirit, not light, but the cause of light. Therefore, we must worship God by these two appellations, which are proper to him alone and to no other. And this he is and nothing else. But all other things are separable from the nature of good. For the body and the soul have no place that is capable of or can contain the good. For the greatness of good is as great as the existence of all things that are, both bodily and intangible, both sensible and intelligible. That is the good, even God. See, therefore, that you do not any time call anything else good, for that is improper, or any else God, but only the good, for that is also improper. In word it is often said by all men the good, but all men do not understand what it is. But through ignorance they call both the gods and some men good. That can never be, or be made so. Therefore, all the other gods are honored with the title or appellation of God. But God is the good, not according to heaven, but nature. For there is one nature of God, even the good, and one kind of them both, from whence all are kinds. For he is the good, is the giver of all things, and takes nothing, and therefore God gives all things, and receives nothing. The other title and appellation is the Father, because of his generative force, for it is the part of a father to make. Therefore it has been the greatest and most religious care in this life, to those that are wise and intelligent, to beget children. As likewise it is the greatest misfortune and impiety for any to be separated from men without children. And this man is punished by death by the demons, and the punishment is this: to have the soul of this childless man judged and condemned to a body that neither has the nature of a man nor of a woman, which is an accursed thing under the sun. Therefore, O Aesculapius, never congratulate any man that is childless, but on the contrary pity his misfortune, knowing what punishment abides and is prepared for him. Let so many and such manner of things, O Aesculapius, be said as a certain precognition of all things in nature. Chapter 10. The Mind to Hermes. Remember your speech, O Hermes Trismegistus, and call to mind to those things that are said. But I will not delay to speak what comes into my mind, for many men have spoken many things, and those very different concerning the universe and good, but I have not learned the truth. Therefore, the Lord makes it plain to me in this point, for I will believe you only for the manifestation of these things. Then said the mind how the case stands: God and all, God, eternity, the world, time, creation. God made eternity, eternity the world time, and time creation. Of God, as it were, the substance, is the good, the fair, the blessedness, wisdom. Of eternity, the identity of self. Of the world, order. Of time, the ability of change. Of creation, life and death. But the operation of God is mind and soul. Of eternity, permanence and immortality. Of the world, restitution and decay. Of time, increase and decrease. And of creation, qualities. Therefore, eternity is in God, the world in eternity, time in the world, and creation in time. And eternity revolves around God. The world is moved in eternity. Time is determined in the world. Creation is done in time. Therefore, the spring and fountain of all things is God. The substance is from eternity. The matter is from the world. The power of God is eternity. And the work of eternity is the world not yet made, and yet continually made by eternity. Therefore shall nothing be at any time destroyed, for eternity is incorruptible. Neither can anything perish or be destroyed in this world, the world being contained and embraced by eternity. But what is the wisdom of God? Even the good and the fair, the blessedness, and every virtue and eternity. Eternity, therefore, put into the matter immortality and permanence, for the generation of that depends on eternity, even as eternity does of God. For generation and time, in heaven and in earth, are of a double nature. In heaven they are unchangeable and incorruptible, but on earth they are changeable and corruptible. And the soul of eternity is God, and the soul of the world eternity, and of the earth heaven. God is in the mind is in the soul in the matter, all things by eternity. All this universal body, in which all bodies are contained, is full of soul, the soul full of mind, the mind full of God. For within he fills them, and without he contains them, giving life to the universe. Without, he gives life to this perfect living thing, the world, and within he creates all living creatures. And above in heaven he abides in identity, but below upon earth he changes creation. Eternity understands the world either by necessity or providence or nature. And if any man shall think any other thing, it is God that operates this whole. But the operation of God is power, to which none may compare anything, either mundane or divine. Therefore, O Hermes, think none of these things below, or the things above, in any way is like unto God. For if you do, you err from the truth. For nothing can be like the unlike, and only, and one, nor ought you to think that he has given his power to any other thing. For who after him can make anything, either of life or immortality, of change or of quality? And himself, what other things should he make? For God is not idle, for then all things would be idle, for all things are full of God. But there is not anywhere in the world such a thing as idleness, for idleness is a name that implies a thing void or empty, both of source and action itself. But all things must necessarily be made or done both always, and according to the nature of every place. For he that makes or does is in all things, yet not fastened or comprehended in anything, nor making, doing one thing, but all things. For being an active or operating power, and sufficient of himself for the things that are made, and the things that are made are under him. Look upon, through me, the world is subject to your sight, and understand exactly the beauty thereof. A body perpetual, for which nothing is more ancient, yet always vigorous and young. See also the 7 worlds set over us, adorned with an everlasting order, and filling eternity with a different course. For all things are full of light, but the fire is nowhere. For the friendship and opposition of dichotomies and unlike become light shining from the operation of God, the Father of all good, the Prince of all order, and the ruler of the 7 worlds. Look also upon the moon, the forerunner of them all, the instrument of nature, and which changes the matter here below. Behold the earth, the middle of the whole, the firm and stable foundation of the fair world, the freer and nurse of earthly things. Consider, moreover, how great the multitude is of immortal living things, and of mortal ones also, and see the moon going about in the midst of both, to wit, of things immortal and mortal. But all things are full of soul, and all things are properly moved by it. Some things about the heaven, and some things about the earth, and neither of those things on the right hand to the left, nor those on the left hand to the right, nor those things that are above, downward, nor those things that are below, upwards. That all these things are made, O beloved Hermes, you need not learn from me, for they are bodies and have a soul and are moved. And that all these should come together into one is impossible without something to gather them together. Therefore, there must be some such ones, and he altogether one, God. For seeing that the motions are indifferentiated and plural, and the bodies not unlike, and yet one ordered swiftness among them all, it is impossible there should be 2 or more makers. For one order is not kept by many. But in the weaker there would also be jealousy of the stronger, and thence also contentions. And if there were one maker, of mutable mortal living weights, he would desire also to make immortal ones, as he that were the maker of immortal ones would do to make mortal. Moreover, also, if there were two, the matter of being one, who should be chief or have power over the course of events? Or if both of them, which of them the greater part? But I think thus, that every living body has its consistence of matter and soul, and of that which is immortal, and that which is mortal and unreasonable. For all living bodies have a soul, and those things that are not living are only matter by itself. And the soul likewise, of itself drawing near her Maker, is the cause of life and being, and being the cause of life is, after a manner, the cause of immortal things. How then are mortal spirits different from the immortal? Or how cannot he make living spirits that cause immortal things and immortality? That there is somebody that does these things is apparent, and that he is also one, it is also most manifest. For there is one soul, one life, and one matter. Who is this? Who can it be other than the one God? For who else can it benefit to make living things, save only God alone? There is therefore one God. For it is a ridiculous thing to confess the world to be one sun, one moon, one divinity, and yet to have, I know not how many gods. He therefore being one, does all things in many things. And what great thing is it for God to make life and soul and immortality and change, when you yourself do so many things? For you see and hear, smell, taste, and feel, move, understand, and breathe. And it is not one that sees, and another that hears, and another that speaks, another that feels, and another that smells, and another that walks, another that understands, and another that breathes, but one that does all these things. Yet neither can these things possibly be without God. For as you, if thou shalt cease from doing these things, were not a living spirit, so if God should cease from these things, he would no longer be God. For if it be already demonstrated that nothing can be idle or empty, how much more may be affirmed of God? For if there be anything which he does not do, then it is he would be imperfect. Whereas, seeing how he is not idle but perfect, certainly he does all things. Now give yourself unto me, O Hermes, for a little while. You will thus more easily understand that it is the necessary work of God, that all things should be made or done that are done, or were once done, or that shall be done. And this, O best beloved, is life. This is the fair. This is the good. This is God. And if you will understand this by work also, mark what happens to yourself when you procreate. And yet this is not unlike God, for he is not sensible of pleasure, for neither does he have any other fellow workman. But being himself the only workman, he is always in the work, himself being that which creates. For all things, if they were separate from him, must inevitably fall and die, as there being no life in them. And again, if all things be living spirits, both which are in heaven and upon earth, and that there be made one life in all things which are made by God, and that is God, then certainly all things are made or done by God. Life is the union of mind and the soul, but death is not the destruction of those things that were gathered together, but a dissolving of the union. The image, therefore, of God is eternity, of eternity the world, of the world the Son, of the Son man. But the people say that changing is death, because the body is dissolved and the life goes into that which is untangible. By this course, my dearest Hermes, I affirm, as you hear, that the world is changed, because every day part thereof becomes invisible, but it is never dissolved. And these are the passions of the world, revolutions and occultations, and revolution is a turning, but occultation is renovation. And the world being all formed, does not have forms lying without it, but changes itself into itself. Seeing then that the world is all formed, what must he be that made it? For without form he cannot be. And if he be all formed, he will be kept like the world. But if he have but one form, he shall be in this regardless of the world. What do we then say that he is? We will not raise any doubts by our speech, for nothing that is doubtful concerning God is yet known. He has therefore one idea which is proper to him, which, because it is intangible, is not subject to the sight, and yet shows all forms by the bodies. And do not wonder if there be an incorruptible idea, for they are like the processions of speech, which is in writing, for there seem to be high and swelling, but they are by nature smooth and even. But understand well this that I say more boldly, for it is more true. As man cannot live without life, so neither God can live without doing good. For this is, as it were, the life and motion of God, to move all things and to give life to them. But some of the things I have said must have a particular explanation. Understand then what I say. All things are in God, not as lying in a place, for place is both a body and unchanging, and those things that are placed have no motion. For they lie otherwise in that which is intangible, than in the fantasy or to appearance. Consider him that contains all things, and understand that nothing is more capacious than that which is incorporeal, nothing more swift, nothing more powerful, but it is most capacious, most swift, and most strong. And judge this for yourself. Command your soul to go into India, and sooner than you command it, it will be there. Bid it likewise pass over the ocean, and suddenly it will be there. Not as passing from place to place, but suddenly it will be there. Command it to fly into heaven, it will not need wings, neither shall anything hinder it, not the fire of the sun, not the ether, not the turning of the spheres, not the body of any other stars, but cutting through it all, it will fly up to the last and furthest body. And if you even wish to break the whole, and see those things that are without the world, you are able to do so. Behold, how great power, how great swiftness you have. Can you do all things, and God cannot? After this manner, therefore, contemplate God to have all the whole world to himself, as it were, all thoughts or intellects. If therefore you do not equal yourself to God, you cannot understand God, for the like is intelligible by the like. Increase yourself unto an immeasurable greatness, leaping beyond every body and transcending all time. Become eternity, and then you understand God. If you believe in yourself that nothing is impossible, but account yourself as immortal, and that you may understand all things, every art, every science, and the manner and custom of every living thing. Become higher than all height, lower than all depths. Comprehend in yourself the qualities of all creatures, of the fire, the water, the dry and moist, and conceive likewise that you can at once be everywhere, in the sea, in the earth. Then you will at once understand yourself, yet not begotten in the womb, young, old, to be dead, the things after death, and all these together, as also times, places, deeds, qualities, quantities, or else you cannot yet understand God. But if you shut up your soul in the body and abuse it, and say, I understand nothing, I can do nothing, I am afraid of the sea, I cannot climb up to heaven, I know not who I am, I cannot tell what I shall be, what do you have to do with God? For you may understand none of those fair and good things, and still be a lover of the body and evil. For it is the greatest evil not to know God. But to be able to know and to will and to hope is the straight way, the divine way, proper to the good. And it will everywhere be with you, and everywhere be seen of you, plain and easy. When you do not expect or look for it, it will meet you walking, sleeping, sailing, traveling, by night, by day, when you speak, and when you are silent. For there is nothing which is not the image of God. And yet you say God is invisible. But be advised, for who is more manifest than he? For therefore he has made all things, that you by all things may see him. This is the good of God. This is the virtue, to appear and to be seen in all things. There is nothing invisible, no, not of these things that are incorporeal. The mind is seen in understanding, and God is seen in doing or making. Let these things thus be made manifest unto you, O Trismegistus. Understand in like manner all other things by yourself, and you may not be deceived. Chapter 11. Of the Common Mind, to Tat. The mind, O Tat, is of the very essence of God, if yet there be any essence of God. What kind of essence that is, he alone knows himself exactly. The mind, therefore, is not cut off or divided from the essence of God, but united as the light of the sun. And this mind in men is God, and therefore are some men divine, and their humanity is near divinity. For the good demon are called the gods, immortal men, and men mortal gods. But in the brute beast or unreasonable living spirits, the mind is their nature. For where there is a soul, there is the mind, as where there is life, there is also a soul. In living creatures, therefore, that are without reason, the soul is life, void of the operations of the mind. For the mind is the benefactor of the souls of men, and works to the proper good. And in unreasonable things it cooperates with the nature of every one of them, but in men it works against their nature. For the soul being in the body is straightway made evil by sorrow, and grief and pleasure. For grief and pleasure flow like juices from the body. Thus, when the soul enters or descends, she is moistened and tinctured with them. As many souls, therefore, as the mind controls, to them it shows its own light, resisting their propositions or presumptions. As a good physician grieves the body, possessed of by a disease, by burning or lancing it for health's sake. After the same manner also the mind grieves the soul, by drawing it out of pleasure, from whence every disease of the soul comes. But the great disease of the soul is atheism, because that opinion follows to all evil and no good. Therefore, the mind resisting, it procures good to the soul, as a physician to the body. But as many souls of men as do not admit or entertain the mind for their governor, do suffer the same thing the souls of unreasonable living things does. For the soul being a cooperator with them, permits or leaves them to their concupiscence, by which they are carried by the power of their appetite, and so tend to brutishness. And as brute beasts, they are angry without reason, and they desire without reason and never cease, nor are they satisfied with evil. For unreasonable angers and desires are the most exceeding evils. And therefore God set the mind over there, to give revenge and reproach to them. Tat remarked, "Hear, O father, that discourse of fate of destiny which you told me is in danger of being overthrown. For if it be fatal for any man to commit adultery or sacrilege, or do any evil, he is punished, though he of necessity do the work of fate or destiny." He replied, "All things, O son, are the work of fate, and without it it can be no bodily thing, either good or evil, be done. For it is decreed by fate that he does any evil should also suffer for it. And therefore he does it, that he may suffer that which he suffers because he did it. But for the present, forsake that speech concerning evil and fate, for at other times we have spoken of it. Now our discourse is about the mind and what it can do, and how it differs, and is in men such as a one, but in brute beast rather is changed. And again in brute beasts it is not beneficial, but in men it is, by quenching both their anger and concupiscence. And of men you must understand, some be rational, or governed by reason, and some irrational. But all men are subject to fate, and to generation and change, for these are the beginning and end of fate or destiny. And all men suffer these things that are decreed by fate. But rational men, over whom, as we said, the mind bears rule, do not suffer like unto other men, but being free from viciousness, and being not evil, they do suffer evil. Tat asked, "How may you again, father? An adulterer, is he not evil? A murderer, is he not evil? And so of others?" He replied, "But the rational man, O son, will not suffer for adultery, but as the adulterer, not for murder, but as the murderer. And it is impossible to escape the quality of changes as of generation, but the viciousness, he that which has the mind may escape. And therefore, O son, I have always heard the good demon say, and if he has delivered it in writing, he had much profited all mankind. For he alone, O Son, as the firstborn, God seeing all things, truly spoke divine words. I have heard him sometimes that all things are one thing, especially intelligible bodies, or that all especially intelligible bodies are one. We live in power, in act, and in eternity. Therefore a good mind is that which the soul of him is. And if this be so, then no intelligible thing differs from intelligible things. As therefore it is possible that the mind, the prince of all things, so likewise that the soul is of God, can do whatsoever it will. But understand well, for this discourse I have made to the question which you asked me before, I mean concerning fate and the mind. First, O Son, if you diligently withdraw yourself from all contentious speeches, you will find that in truth the mind, the soul of God, bears rule over all things, both over fate and law and all other things. And nothing is impossible to him, no, not of the things that are of fate. Therefore, though the soul of man is above it, let it not neglect the things that are happen to be under fate. And these thus far were the excellent sayings of the good demon. Tat said, Most divinely spoken, O Father, and truly and profitably, yet clear this one thing unto me. You said that in brute beasts the mind works after the manner of nature, cooperating also with their inclinations. Now the impious inclinations of brute beasts, as I conceive, are passion. If therefore the mind cooperates with these impious inclinations, and that they are in passions in brute beasts, certainly the mind is also a passion, conforming itself to passions. Well done, son, you ask nobly, and it is proper that I answer you. All incorporeal things, O son, that are in the body are changeable, nay, they are properly passions. Everything that moves is incorporeal. Everything that is moved is a body, and it is moved into the bodies by the mind. Now motion is passion, and they both suffer, as well that which moves, as that which is moved, as well that which rules, as that which is ruled. But being freed from the body, it is freed likewise from passion. But especially, O son, there is nothing unchanging, but all things are changeable. But passion differs from that which is impassioned, for passion acts, but this suffers. Bodies also of themselves do act, for either they are immovable, or else are moved. And whatsoever it be, it is a passion. But incorporeal things do always act or work, and therefore they are impassioned. Let not, therefore, the appellations or names trouble you, for action and passion are the same thing, but that it is not grievous to use a more honorable name. Tat said, O Father, you have delivered this discourse most plainly. Consider this also, O son, that God has freely bestowed upon man, above all other living things, these two, to wit, mind and speech, equal to immortality. These, if any man use or employ upon what he ought, he shall differ nothing from the immortals. Rather, going out of the body, he shall be guided and led by them, both into the choir and society of God, and blessed ones. Tat said, Do not other living creatures use speech, O Father? No, son, but only voice. Now speech and voice do differ exceedingly much, for speech is common to all men, but voice is proper unto every kind of living thing. Tat stated, Yea, but the speech of men is different, O Father, every man according to his nation. It is true, O son, they do differ, yet as man is one, so is speech one also, and it is interpreted and found the same, both in Egypt, Persia, and Greece. But you seem to be ignorant of the virtue and greatness of speech. For the blessed God, the good demon, commanded the soul to be in the body, the mind in the soul, the word or reason in the mind, and the mind in God, and that God is the Father of them all. Therefore, the word is the image of the mind, and the mind of God, and the body of the idea, and the idea of the soul. Therefore, of the matter, the smallest part is air, of the air the soul, of the soul the mind, of the mind God. And God is about all things and through all things, but the mind about the soul about the air, and the air about the matter. But necessity and providence and nature are the components of the world and of the order of matter. For of those things that are intelligible, everyone is, but the essence of them is identity. But of the bodies of the whole, or universe, every one is many things. For the bodies that are put together, and that have, and made their changes one to the other, having this identity, do always preserve the incorruptibility of the identity. But in every one of the compound bodies there is a number. For without number it is impossible there should be consistence, or constitution, or composition, or dissolution. But unities both beget and increase numbers, and again being dissolved, came into themselves, and the matter is singular. But this whole world, the great God in the image of the greater, and united unto him, and concerning the order and the will of the Father, is the fullness of life. And there is nothing therein, through all the eternity of the revolution, neither of the whole, nor of the parts which are inanimate. For there is nothing dead that either has been, or is, or shall be in the world. For the Father would have it, as long as it lasts, to be a living thing, and therefore it is God also. How, therefore, O Son, can there be a God in the image of the universe, in the fullness of life, any dead things? For dying is corruption, and corruption is destruction. How, then, can any part of the incorruptible be corrupted, or of God be destroyed? Tat said, Therefore, O Father, do not the living things in the world die, though they be parts thereof? He replied, Be wary of your speech, O Son, and not be deceived in the names of things. For they do not die, O Son, but as compound bodies they are dissolved. But dissolution is not death, and they are dissolved, nor that they may be destroyed, but that they may be reincarnated. Tat said, What then is the operation of life? Is it not motion? And what is there in the world unmovable? Nothing at all, O Son. Tat said, Why? Why do you not consider the world immovable, O Father? No, but subject to many motions, though after a manner it alone be stable. What a ridiculous thing it were that the nurse of all things should be immovable, which carries and brings forth all things. For it is impossible that anything that brings forth should bring forth without motion. And a ridiculous question it is, whether the fourth part of the whole be idle. For the word immovable, or without motion, signifies nothing else but idleness. Know generally, O Son, that whatsoever is in the world is moved either according to augmentation or diminution. But that which is moved is alive, yet it is not necessary that a living thing should be or continue the same. For while the whole world is together, it is unchangeable, O Son, but all the parts thereof are changeable. Yet nothing is corrupted or destroyed, or quite abolished, but the names trouble those who would ponder them. For generation is not life, but sense, neither is change death, but forgetfulness, or rather, occultation and lying hid. For generation it is not a creation of life, but a production of things to sense, and making them manifest. Neither is change death, but an occultation of hiding that which was. These things being so, all things are immortal, matter, life, spirit, soul, mind, wherever of living things consist. Every living thing, therefore, is immortal because of the mind, but especially man, who both receives God and converses with him. For with this living spirit alone is God familiar, in the night by dreams, in the day by symbols or signs. And by all things does he foretell him of things to come, by birds, by the spirit or wind, and by an oak. Wherefore also man professed to know things that have been, things that are present, and things to come. Consider this also, O Son, that every other living creature goes upon one part of the world, swimming things in the water, land spirits upon the earth, flying fowls in the air. But man uses all these, the earth, the water, the air, and the fire. Nay, he sees and touches heaven by his senses. But God is both about all things and through all things, for he is both act and potential to act. It is no hard thing, O Son, to understand God. And if you wish also to see him, look upon the necessity of things that appear, and the providence of things that have been and are done. See the matter being most full of life, and so great a God moved with all good and fair, both gods and demons and man. Tat said, "But these, O Father, are holy acts or operations." He replied, "If they be, therefore, holy acts or operations, O Son, by whom are they acted or operated but by God? Or are you ignorant that as parts of the world are heaven and earth, and water and air, after the same manner the members of God are life, and immortality, and eternity, and spirit, and necessity, providence, and nature, soul and mind, and the persistence of all these which is called good? And there is not anything of all that has been, and all that is, where God is not. What in matter, O Father? The matter, O Son, what is it without God, that you should ascribe a proper place to it? Or what do you think it to be? Peradventure, some heap that is not actuated or operated. But if it be actuated, by whom is it actuated? For we have said that operations are the parts of God. By whom are all living things given life? And the immortal, by whom are they immortalized? The things that are changeable, by whom are they changed? Whether you are speaking of matter or body or essence, know that all of these are acts of God, and that the act of matter is a material state, and of the bodies a corporeal state, and of essence an ethereal state, and this is God the whole. And in the whole there is nothing that is not God. Wherefore about God there is neither greatness, place, quality, figure, or time, for he is all, and the all, through all, and about all. This word, O Son, worship and adore, and the only service of God is not to be evil. Chapter 12. His Crater, or Mones. The workman made this universal world, not with his hands, but with his word. Therefore, thus think of him as present everywhere and being always, and making all things, and one above, that by his will has framed the things that are. For that is his body, not tangible, nor visible, nor measurable, nor extensible, nor like any other body. For it is neither fire, nor water, nor air, nor wind, but all these things are of him. For being good, he has dedicated that name unto himself alone. But he would also adorn the earth, but with the ornament of a divine body. And he sent man both an immortal and mortal spirit. And man had more than all living creatures and the world because of his speech and mind. For man became the observer of the works of God, and wondered and acknowledged the Maker. For he divided speech among all men, but not mind, and yet he envied not any. For envy comes not to him, but is extant here below in the souls of men that have not the mind. Tat asked, "But how, O Father, did not God distribute the mind to all men?" He replied, "Because it pleased him, O Son, to set that in the middle among all souls, as a reward to strive for." And where did he set it? He replied, "Filling a large cup or bowl therewith, he sent it down, giving also a herald. And he commanded the herald to proclaim these things to the souls of men. Dip and wash yourself, you thou that are able in this cup, you that believe you can return to him that sent this cup, you that acknowledge how you were made." As many, therefore, as understood this proclamation and were baptized, or doused into the mind, these were made partakers of knowledge, and became perfect men, receiving the mind. But as many as ignored the proclamation, they received speech, but not mind, being ignorant how they were made or by whom. But their senses are just like to brute beasts, and having their temper in anger and wrath, they do not admire things worthy of looking on. But wholly addicted to the pleasures and desires of the body, they believe that man was made for them. But as many as partake of the gift of God, these, O Tat, in comparison of their works, are rather immortal than mortal men, comprehending all things in their mind, which are upon earth, which are in heaven, and if there is anything above in heaven. And lifting up themselves so high, they see the good, and seeing it, they account a miserable calamity to make their home here below. And despising all things bodily and intangible, they make haste to the one and only God. Thus, O Tat, is the knowledge of the mind, the beholding of divine things, and the understanding of God, the cup itself being divine. Tat said, I, O Father, would be baptized and drenched therein. Except you first hate your body, O son, you may not love yourself, but loving yourself you will have the mind, and having the mind you may also partake in the knowledge. Tat asked, What do you mean, O Father? Because it is impossible, O son, to be conversant among things mortal and divine. For the things that are, being two bodies, and things incorporeal, wherein is the mortal and the divine, the choice of either is left to him that will choose, for no man can choose both. And of whichever the choice is made, the other being diminished or overcome, increases the operation of the other. The choice of the better, therefore, is not only best for him that chooses it, by defying man, but it also shows piety and religion towards God. But the choice of the worst destroys a man, but does nothing against God, save superficially when they come abroad. They cannot do anything themselves but hinder. After the same manner also do these make fantasies in the world, being seduced by the pleasures of the body. These things being so, O Tat, things that have been and are so plenteous in being ministered to us from God, let them also proceed from us, without any scarcity or sparing. For God is guiltless, but we are the causes of evil, preferring them before the good. You see, O son, how many bodies we must go beyond, and how many choirs of demons, and what continuity and courses of stars, that we may make haste to the one and only God. For the good is not to be transcended. It is unbound and infinite, unto itself, without beginning, but unto us seeming to have a beginning, even our knowledge of it. For our knowledge is not the beginning of it, but shows us the beginning of it being known to us. Let us, therefore, lay hold of the beginning, and we shall quickly go through all things. It is indeed a difficult thing to leave these things that are usual and present, and turn us to those things that are ancient and according to the original. For these things that appear delight us, but make the things that appear not hard to believe, or the things that appear not are hard to believe. The things most apparent are evil, but the good is secret and hidden, for it has neither form nor figure. For this cause it is like to itself, but unlike everything else, for it is impossible that anything incorporeal should be made known or appear to a body. For this is the difference between the like and the unlike, and the unlike wants always somewhat of the like. For the unity, beginning and root of all things, as being the root and the beginning. Nothing is without a beginning, but the beginning is of nothing but of itself, for it is the beginning of all other things. Therefore it is, seeing it is not from another beginning. Unity, therefore, being the beginning, contains every number, but itself is contained of none, and forms every number, itself being begotten of no other number. Everything that is begotten is imperfect, and must be divided, increased, diminished. But to the perfect there happens none of these. And that which is increased by unity, but is consumed and vanished through weakness, being not able to receive the unity. This image of God have I described to you, O Tat, as well as I could, which if you diligently consider and view by the eyes of your mind, and hear, believe me, son, you can find the way to things above, or rather the image itself will lead you. But the spectacle has this peculiar and proper. They that can see and behold it, it holds fast and draws like a lodestone can to iron. Chapter 13. Of Sense and Understanding. Yesterday, Aesculapius, I delivered a perfect discourse, but now I think it necessary, in spite of that, to speak also of sense. For sense and understanding seem to differ, because the one is material and the other essential. But unto me they appear to be both one, or united, and not divided in men, I mean. For in other living creatures sense is united into nature, but in men to understanding. But the mind differs from understanding, as much a God from divinity. For divinity is subjugated to God, and understanding subjugated to the mind, being the sister of the world, and they the instruments of one another. For neither is the word pronounced without understanding, neither is understanding manifested without the word. Therefore, sense and understanding do both flow together into a man, as if they were included one within another. For neither is it possible without sense to understand, nor can we have sense without understanding. And yet it is possible that the understanding may understand without sense, as they that fancy visions in their dreams. But it seems unto me that both the operations are in the visions of dreams, and that the sense is stirred up out of sleep into awakening. For man is divided into a body and a soul. When both parts of the sense connect one with another, then is the understanding brought forth by the mind pronounced. For the mind brings forth all thought, good ones when it receives good seed from God, and the contrary when it receives them from devils. For there is not part of the world void of the devil, which entering in privately, sowed the seed of his own proper operation, and the mind did make pregnant, or did bring forth that which was sown. Adulterers, murders, strife, sacrilege, impiety, assault, butchery, and all other things, which are the works of evil demons. And the seeds of God are few, but fair and good, virtue, temperance, and piety. And the piety is the knowledge of God, whereby whosoever knows, being full of all good things, has divine understanding, and not like the multitude. And therefore they that have the knowledge neither please the multitude, nor the multitude them, but they seem to be mad, and to move laughter, hatred, and despised, and many times also murdered. For we have already said that wickedness must dwell here, being in her own region. For her region is the earth, and not the world, as some will sometimes say, blaspheming. But the godly man, laying hold on knowledge, will despise all these things. For though they be evil to other men, yet to him all things are good. And upon mature consideration, he refers all things to knowledge, and that which is most to be wondered at, he alone makes evil things good. But I return again to my discourse of sense. It is, therefore, a thing proper to man, to communicate and conjoin sense and understanding. But every man, as I said before, does not enjoy understanding, for one man is material, another essential. And he that is material with wickedness, as I said, received from the devils the seed of understanding. But they that are with the good essentially listen to God. For God is the workman of all things, and when he works, he uses nature. He makes all things good like himself. But these things that are made good are in the use of operation unlawful. For the motion of the world, stirring up generations, makes qualities, infesting some with wickedness, and purifying some with good. And the world, Aesculapius, contains a peculiar sense and understanding, not like to man's, nor to various or manifold, but a better and more simple. For the sense and understanding of the world is one, in that it makes all things, and unto them again into itself, for it is the instrument of the will of God. And it is so organized and made for an instrument by God, that receiving all seeds into itself from God, and keeping them in itself, it makes all things effectively, and dissolving them, renews all things. And therefore, like a good husband of life, when things are dissolved or loosened, he affords, by the casting of seeds, renovation to all things that grow. There is nothing that it does not bring forth alive, and by its motions it makes all things alive. And it is at once both the place and the workman of life. But the bodies are from the matter, in a different manner, and some are of earth, some of water, some of air, some of fire, and all are compounded, but some are more compounded, and some are more simple. They that are compounded are the heavier, and they that are the less are the higher. And the swiftness of the motion of the world makes the varieties of the qualities of generation, for the inspiration of influence being most frequent, extends unto the body's qualities, with satiation, which is of life. Therefore God is the Father of the world, but the world is father of the things of the world. And the world is the Son of God, but things in the world are the sons of the world. And therefore it is well called the world, that is, an ornament, because it adorns and beautifies all things with the variety of generation and limitless power of life, with the tirelessness of operation and the swiftness of necessity, with the mingling of elements and the order of things done. Therefore it is necessarily and properly called the world. For in all living things, both the sense and the understanding comes into them from without, inspired by that which surrounds them and provides for them. And the world receiving at once from God as soon as it will be made, has it still, whatever it once had. But God is not, as it seems to some who blaspheme through superstition, without sense and without mind or understanding. For all things that are, O Aesculapius, are in God and made by him, and dependent of him, some working by bodies, some moving by a soul, like essence, some quickening by a spirit, and some receiving the things that are weary, and all very fitfully. Or rather, I say, that he has them not, but I declare the truth. For he is all things, not receiving them from without, but exhibiting them outwardly. And this is the sense and understanding of God, to move all things always. And there shall never be any time when any of these things that are shall fail or be wanting. When I say the things that are, I mean God, for the things that are, God is, and neither is there anything without him, nor he without anything. These things, O Aesculapius, will appear to be true if you understand them, but if you understand them not, they will seem incredible. For to understand is to believe, but not to believe is to not understand. For my speech or words reach not unto the truth, but the mind is great, and being led or conducted for a while by speech, is able to attain to the truth. And understanding all things round about, and finding them constant and agreeable to those things that were delivered and interrupted by speech, believe, and in that good belief rest. To them, therefore, that understand the things that have been said of God, they are credible, but to them that understand them not, incredible. And let these, and thus many things, be spoken concerning understanding and sense. Chapter 14, of Operation and Sense. Tat said, "You have well explained these things, O Father. Teach me furthermore these things, for you said that science and art were the operations of the rational. But now you say that beasts are unreasonable, and for want of reason are called brutes, so that this reason, it must needs follow, that unreasonable creatures partake not of science or art, because they come short of reason. It must needs be, O son." He continued, "Why then, O Father, do we see some unreasonable living creatures using both science and art, as the ants hoard up themselves food against winter, and fowls of the air likewise make them nests, and creeping things beasts know their own dens? These things they do, O son, not by science or art, but by nature. For science and art are things that are taught, but none of these brute beasts are taught any of these things. But these things being natural unto them are wrought by nature, whereas art and science do not happen unto all, but unto some. As men are musicians, but not all, neither are all archers or huntsmen or the rest, but some of them had learned something by the working of science or art. After the same manner also, if some ants did so and some not, you would thus well say they gather their food according to science and art. But being they are all led by nature to the same thing, even against their will, it is manifest that they do not do it by science or art. For operations, O Tat, being intangible, are in bodies, and work by bodies. Wherefore, O Tat, inasmuch as they are intangible, we must say they are immortal. But inasmuch as they cannot act without bodies, I say they are always in a body. For those things that are to anything, or for the cause of anything made subject to providence or necessity, cannot possibly remain idle of their own proper operation. For that which is shall ever be, for both the body and the life of it is the same. And by this reason it follows that their bodies also are always, because I affirm that this corporeal nature is always by the act and operation, or for them. For although earthly bodies be subject to dissolution, yet these bodies must be the places and the organs and the instruments of action. But actions are immortal, and that which is immortal is always in act, and also, therefore, death if it be permanent. Acts or operations do follow the soul, yet come not suddenly or promiscuously, but some of them come together with being made by man, being about brutish or unreasonable things. But the purer operations do insensibly in the change of time work with the oblique part of the soul. And these operations depend upon bodies, and truly they that are becoming flesh come from the divine bodies into mortal ones. But every one of them acts in both about the body and the soul, and are present with the soul even without the body. And they are always operations, but the soul is not always in a mortal body, for it can be without a body, but operations cannot be without bodies. This is a sacred speech, O son. The body cannot exist without a soul. Tat asked, "What do you mean, father?" Understand it thus, O Tat. When the soul is separated from the body remains. And this same body, according to the time of its abode, is actuated, or operated in that it is dissolved and becomes invisible. And these things the body cannot suffer without act or operation, and consequently there remains with the body the same act or operation. This then is the difference between an immortal body and a mortal one, that the immortal one consists of one matter, and so doth not the mortal one, and the immortal one does, but this suffers. And everything that acts or operates is stronger and holds sway, but that which is actuated or operated is subjugated. And that which rules also directs, and governs is free, but the other is ruled and is a servant. Acts do not only act or operate, living or breathing, or insulated within living bodies, but also corpses, or without souls, wood and stones and such like, increasing and bearing fruit, ripening, corrupting, rotting, putrefying and breaking, or working such like things, and whatsoever inanimate bodies can suffer. Act or operation, O son, is called whatsoever is, or is made or done, and there are always many things made, or rather all things. For the world is never widowed or forsaken of any of these things that are, but being always carried or moved in itself, it is in labor to bring forth the things that are, which shall never be left by it to corruption. Let therefore every act or operation be understood to be always immortal, in what manner of body soever it be. But some acts or operations are divine, some of corruptible bodies, some universal, some peculiar, and some of the generals, and some of the parts of everything. Divine acts or operations, therefore, there be, and such as work or operate upon their proper bodies, and these also are perfect, in being upon or imperfect bodies. Particular are they which work by any of the living creatures. Proper be they that work upon any of the things that are. By this discourse, therefore, O son, it is gathered that all things are full of operations. For if necessarily they be in every body, and that there may be bodies in the world, I may very well affirm that there may be other acts or operations. For many items in one body there is one, and a second and a third, besides these universal ones that follow. And universal operations, I call them that are indeed bodily, and are done by the senses and motions. For without these it is impossible that the body should exist. But other operations are proper to the souls of men, by arts, sciences, studies, and actions. The senses also follow these operations, or rather are the effects of them. Understand, therefore, O son, the difference of operations. It is sent from above. But sense being in the body, and having its essence from it, when it receives act or operation, manifests it, making it, as it were, corporeal. Therefore I say that the senses are both corporeal and mortal, having so much existence as the body, for they are born with the body and die with it. But mortal things themselves have not sense, as not consisting of such an essence. For sense can be of no other than a corporeal apprehension, either of evil or good, that comes to the body. But to external bodies there is nothing which comes, nothing which departs. Therefore it is no sense in them. Tat asked, "Does the sense therefore perceive or apprehend in every body?" "In every body, O son." He continued, "And do the acts or operations work in all things?" "Even in things inanimate, O son. But there are differences of senses. For the senses of things rational are with reason, of things unreasonable, corporeal only. But the senses of things inanimate are passive only, according to augmentation and diminution. But passion and sense depend both upon one head, or spirit, and are gathered together into the same, by acts or operations. But in living spirits there be two other operations that follow the senses and passions, to wit, grief and pleasure. And without these, it is impossible that a living spirit, especially a reasonable one, should perceive or apprehend. And therefore I say that these are the ideas of passion that bear rule, especially in reasonable living spirits. The operations work indeed, but the senses do declare and manifest the operations, and they, being bodily, are moved by the brutish parts of the soul. Therefore I say they are both malevolent and doers of evil. For that which affords the sense to rejoice with pleasure, it thus the cause of many evils happening to him that suffers it. But sorrow gives stronger torments and anguish. Therefore doubtless are they both malevolent. The same may be said of the sense of soul. Tat asked, "Is not the soul incorporeal, and the sense a body, father? Or is it rather in the body?" "If we put it in a body, O son, we shall make it like the soul, or the operations, for these being intangible, we say, are in bodies. But sense is neither operation nor soul, nor anything else that belongs to the body. But as we have said, and therefore it is not incorporeal. And if it be not incorporeal, it must need a body, for we always say that of things that are, some are bodies, and some are incorporeal." Chapter 15. Of Truth, to his son Tat. Of truth, O Tat, it is not possible that man, being an imperfect being, compounded of imperfect members, and having his tabernacle consisting of different and many bodies, should speak with any confidence. But as far as it is possible and just, I say that truth is only in eternal bodies, whose very bodies are also true. The fire is fire itself only, and nothing else. The earth is earth itself, and nothing else. The air is air itself, and nothing else. The water, water itself, and nothing else. But our bodies consist of all of these, for they have of the fire, and they have of the earth, they have of the water and air. And yet there is neither fire, nor earth, nor water, nor air, nor anything true. And if at the beginning our constitution had not truth, how could men either see the truth, or speak it, or understand it, only except God would? All things, therefore, upon earth, O Tat, are not true, but imitations of the truth. And yet not all things neither, for they are but few that are so. But the other things are falsehood and deceit, O Tat, and opinions, like the images of the fancy of appearance. And when the fancy has an influence from above, then it is an imitation of truth. But without the operations from above, it is left a lie. And as an image shows the body described, and yet it is not the body of that which is seen, as it seems to be, and it is seen to have eyes, but it sees nothing, and ears, but it hears nothing at all, and all other things have the likeness thereof, but they are false, deceiving the eyes of the beholder, whilst they think they see the truth, and yet they are indeed but lies. And many, therefore, as see not falsehood, see the truth. If, therefore, we do so understand, and see every one of these things as it is, then we see and understand true things. But if we see or understand anything besides, or unwise, than that which is, we shall neither understand nor know the truth. Tat asked, "Is truth therefore upon earth, O father?" You do not miss the mark, O son. Truth indeed is nowhere at all upon earth, O Tat, for it cannot be generated or made. But concerning the truth, it may be that some men, to whom God will give good seeing power, may understand it. So that unto the mind and reason there is nothing true indeed upon earth. But unto the true mind and reason all things are fancies or appearances and opinions. Tat asked, Must we not, therefore, call it truth, to understand and speak the things that are? He replied, But there is nothing true upon earth. Tat asked again, How then is this true, that we do not know anything true? How can that be done here? O son, truth is the most perfect virtue and the highest good itself, not troubled by matter, not encompassed by a body, naked, clear, unchangeable, venerable, unalterable good. But the things that are here, O son, are visible, incapable of good, corruptible, destructible, soluble, changeable, continually altered and made of another. The things, therefore, that are not true to themselves, how can they be true? For everything that is altered is a lie. Not abiding in what it is, but being changed, it shows us always other and other appearances. Tat asked, Is not man true, O father? As far forth as he is a man, he is not true, O son. For that which is true has of itself alone its constitution, and remains and abides according to itself such as it is. But man consists of many things, and does not abide of himself, but is turned and changed, age after age, idea after idea, or form after form, and this while he is yet in the tabernacle of his body. And many have not known their own children after a little while, and many children likewise have not known their own parents. Is it then possible, O Tat, that he who is so changed, as it is not known, should be true? No, on the contrary, he is a falsehood, being in many appearance of changes. But understand the truth that be, which abides the same and is eternal. But man is not ever thus. Therefore he is also not true. But man is a certain appearance, and appearance is the highest lie. Tat asked, But these eternal bodies, O father, are they not true, though they be changed? Everything that is begotten or made and changed is not true. But being made by our progenitor, they might have had true matter formerly. But these also have in themselves something that is false in regard to their change. For nothing that remains not in itself is true. Tat asked, What shall one say then, O father? That only the sun, which besides the nature of other things is not changed, but abides in itself, is truth? It is truth, and therefore he is only entrusted with the workmanship of the world, ruling and making all things, whom I do both honor and adore his truth. And after the one and first, I acknowledge him the workman. Tat asked, What, therefore, father, do you affirm to be the first truth? The one and only, O Tat, that is not of matter, that is not in a body, that it is without color, without figure or shape, immutable, unalterable, which always is. But falsehood, O son, is corrupted, and corruption has laid a hold upon all things on earth, and the providence of the truth encompasses and will encompass them. For without corruption there could be no generation consist. For corruption follows every generation, that it may again be generated. For those things that are generated must of necessity be generated of those things that are corrupted, and the things generated must needs be corrupted, that the generation of things begins, may not end. Acknowledge, therefore, the first workman by the generation of things. Consequently, the things that are generated of corruption are false, as being sometimes one thing, sometimes another. For it is impossible they that should be made the same things again. And that which is not the same, how is it true? Therefore, O son, we must call these things fancies or appearances. And if we will give a man his right name, we must call him the appearance of a man, and a child, the fancy or appearance of a child, an old man, the fancy or appearance of an old man, a young man, the appearance of a young man, and a man of ripe age, the appearance of a man of ripe age. For neither is a man, nor a child, nor a young man, nor an old man, but the things that are pre-exist, and that being changed are false. These things understand thus, O son, as these false operations, having their dependence from above, even of truth itself. Which being so, I do affirm that falsehood is the work of the truth. Chapter 16. That none of the things that are certain can perish. We must now speak of the soul and body, O son, after what manner the soul is immortal, and what operation that is which constitutes the body and dissolves it. But in none of these is death, for it is a conception of a name, which is either an empty word, or else it is wrongly called death by taking away the first letter instead of immortality. For death is destruction, but there is nothing in the whole world that is truly destroyed. For if the world be a second God, and an immortal living spirit, it is impossible that any part of an immortal living spirit should die. But all things that are in the world are members of the world, especially man, the reasonable living spirit therein. For the first of all is God, the eternal, the unmade, and the workman of all things. The second is the world, made by him, after his own image, and by him held together and nourished, and immortalized, and as from its own Father, ever living. So that as immortal, it is ever living and ever immortal. For that which is ever living differs from that which is eternal. For the eternal was not begotten or made by another, and if it were begotten or made, yet it was made by itself, not by another, but it is always made. For the eternal, as it is eternal, is the universe. For the Father himself is eternal of himself, but the world was made by the Father, ever living and immortal. And as much matter as there was laid upon by him, the Father made it all into a body, and swelling it, made it round like a sphere, imbued with it quality, being itself immortal, and having an eternal material state. The Father, being full of ideas, sowed qualities in the spheres, and shut them up as in a circle, deliberating to beautify with every quality that which afterwards should be made. Then clothing the universal body with immortality, lest the matter, if it would depart from this composition, should be dissolved into its own disorder. For when the matter was incorporated, O son, it was disordered, and it hath here the same confusion always, resolved about other little things, imbued with qualities, in point of augmentation and diminution, which men call death, being indeed a disorder happening about earthly living spirits. For the bodies of heavenly things having one order, which they have received from the Father at the beginning, and is by the saturation of each of them kept indestructible. But the saturation of earthly bodies is their consistence, and their dissolution restores them into incorruptibility, that is, immortality. And so there is made a privation of sense, but not a destruction of bodies. Now the third living spirit is man, made after the image of the world, and having by the will of the Father a mind above other earthly spirits. And he does not only have a sympathy with the second God, but also an understanding of the first. For the second God he apprehends as a body, but the first he understands as incorporeal and the mind of the good. Tat asked, And does not this living spirit perish? Speak advisedly, O son, and learn what God is, what the world is, what an immortal spirit is, and what a destructible one is. And understand that the world is of God, and in God, but man of the world, and in the world. The beginning and end and consistence of all is God. Chapter 17. To Aesculapius, to be truly wise. Because you, O Tat, in your absence, need to learn the things of nature that are, he would not suffer me to give over until I was forced to discourse to him many things at large, that his contemplation might from point to point be more easy and successful. But to you I have thought good to write a few words, choosing out the principal heads of the things that spoken, and to interpret them more mystically, because you have both more years and more knowledge of nature. All things that appear were made and are made. Those things that are made and not made by themselves, but by another. And there are many things made, but especially all things that appear and like which are different and not alike. And the things that be made and done by another. There must be one that must make and do them, and he unmade and more ancient than the things that are made. For I affirm that the things that are made to be made by another, and it is impossible that of the things that are made any should be made more ancient than all, but only that which is never created. He is stronger and is singular, and only knowing all things indeed, as not having anything more ancient than himself. For he bears rule, both over multitude and greatness, and the diversity of things that are made, and the continuity of reality and of the operation. Moreover, the things that are made are visible, but he is invisible, and for this cause he makes them, that he may be made visible, and therefore he makes them always. Thus it is fit to understand, and understanding to admire, and admiring to think yourself happy that you know your natural father. For what is sweeter than a natural father? Who, therefore, is this, or how shall we know him? Or is it just to ascribe unto him alone the title and appellation of God, or of the Maker, or of the Father, or all three? That of God because of his power, the Maker, because of his working and operation, and the Father because of his goodness. For power is different from the things that are made, but act or operation in that all things are made. Wherefore, letting go all much and vain talking, we must understand these two things, that which is made, and him which is the maker. For there is nothing in the middle between these two, nor is there any third. Therefore, understanding all things, remember these two, and think that there are all things, putting nothing into doubt, neither of the things above, nor of the things below, neither of things changeable, nor things that are in darkness or in secret. For all things are but two things, that which makes, and that which is made, and one of them cannot depart or to be divided from the other. For neither is it possible that the maker should be without the thing made, for either of them is the same thing. Therefore cannot the one of them be separated from the other, any more than a thing can be separated from itself. For if he that makes is nothing else but that which makes alone, simple, uncompounded, it is of necessity that he makes the same thing to himself, to whom it is the generation of him that makes to be also all that is made. For that which is generated or made must necessarily be generated or made by another, but without the maker, that which is made neither is made nor is. For the one of them without the other has lost his proper nature by the privation of the other. So if these two be confessed, that which makes and that which is made, then they are one in union, this going before and that following. And that which goes before is God the Maker, and that which follows is that which is made, but it will be what it will. And let no man be afraid because of the variety of things that are made or done, lest he should cast an aspersion of baseness or infamy upon God. For it is only the glory of him to do or make all things. And this making is, as it were, the body of God. And to him that makes or does anything, there is nothing evil or filthy to be imputed, or there is nothing thought evil or filthy. For these are passions that follow generation, as rust follows copper, or as excrement does the body. But neither did the smith make the rust, nor the maker of the filth, nor God the evilness, but the vicissitude of generation makes them, as it were, to blossom out. For this cause did make the change to be, as one should say, the purging of generation. Moreover, it is lawful for the same painter to make both heaven and the gods and the earth, and the sea and men and brute beasts, and inanimate things and trees. And it is impossible for God to make these things. Oh, the great madness and the ignorance of men in things that concern God! For men that think so suffer that which is most ridiculous of all, for professing to bless and praise God, yet in not ascribing to him the making or doing of all things, they know him not. And besides their not knowing him, they are extremely impious against him, attributing unto him passions as pride, or stupidity, or weakness, or ignorance, or envy. For if he does not make or do all things, he is either proud or not able, or ignorant or envious, which is impious to affirm. For God has only one passion, namely good, and he that is good is neither proud nor impotent nor the rest, but God is good itself. For good is all power, to do or make all things, and everything that is made by God, that is, by the good, and that can make them or do all things. See then how he makes all things, and how the things are done, that they are done, and if you wish to learn, you may see an image thereof, very beautiful and like. Look upon the husbandman, how he casts his seed into the earth, here wheat, there barley, and elsewhere some other seeds. Look upon the same man, planting a vine or an apple tree, or a fig tree or some other tree. So does God in heaven sow immortality in the earth, change in the whole life and motion. And these things that are not many but few and easily numbered, for they are all but four, God and generation, in which are all things.